$40 million. That is what this view cost. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights scattered like diamonds below the silence so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. $40 million. And I was completely alone. I stood there, wineglass in hand, watching San Francisco sparkle beneath me. I had not taken a single sip. The glass was just something to hold, something to do with my hands while my sister got married 3,000 miles away. My name is Elise Carter. I am 32 years old, and tonight I became a billionaire. I should have been celebrating. Champagne fireworks, a room full of people who believed in me. Instead, I was standing in an empty villa in an evening gown no one would see, pretending I was fine. I was not fine. But I had gotten very good at pretending. The wedding had started at 6. I knew because I had received the invitation, and then the un-invitation, if you can even call it that. There was no formal letter, no polite explanation, just my father's voice on the phone, cold as always. Not my real father. Richard. "It would be better if you didn't come," he had said. "You will just make everyone uncomfortable." Everyone. As if I was the problem. As if 22 years of trying to earn his approval had been my fault. I set the wineglass down on the marble table. My reflection caught in the dark window. A woman in a $3,000 dress standing in a $40 million home feeling absolutely worthless. The irony was not lost on me. I had not turned on any lights. The city provided enough. And honestly, I did not want to see my own reflection right now. There was something painful about looking at yourself when you felt this empty, like seeing a stranger wearing your face. The clock on the wall ticked. 11:45. The reception would be in full swing by now. Dancing toasts, laughter, all the things families do when they are happy. All the things my family did. Without me. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere in the distance. The city never slept. Neither did I most nights. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was not working. Tonight, I was just existing, waiting for something I could not name. 6 months ago, everything changed. It was Brooke's engagement party. My half-sister, the golden child, announcing her perfect wedding to her perfect fiancé in our parents' perfect living room. I had flown in from San Francisco for it, bought a gift I could not really afford at the time, smiled until my face hurt. And then Richard opened his mouth. We were alone in the kitchen. I had gone to get more ice. Or maybe I was just looking for a moment to breathe. The party was loud, full of relatives who looked through me like I was furniture. I needed silence. Just a minute of it. He followed me. I should have known something was wrong when he followed me. Richard never sought me out. Never. In 22 years, I could count on one hand the number of times he had intentionally been alone with me. "Elise." His voice was not angry. It was worse than that. It was tired. "We need to talk." I was filling the ice bucket from the freezer. My hands did not stop moving. Maybe if I kept moving, he would just go away. "About what?" "About your presence at the wedding." I remember setting down the ice bucket. Slowly, carefully. Like if I moved too fast, I might shatter into 1,000 pieces right there on the kitchen floor. "My presence." He sighed. Actually sighed. As if I was exhausting him. As if my mere existence was a burden he had been carrying for too long. "You know how you get at family events. The comments, the attitude. Brooke's day should be about her." 22 years. I had spent 22 years in that family. 22 years of birthday parties where I sat in the corner. 22 years of holidays where my gifts were afterthoughts. 22 years of being the ghost in the family photograph. And in that moment, I finally understood that I had never really been part of it. "I don't have an attitude," I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "I have opinions. There's a difference." "This is exactly what I mean." He shook his head. "You always have to argue. You always have to be right. You can't just be grateful." Grateful. The word hung in the air like poison. Something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like ice before it gives way. 22 years, Richard. The words came out before I could stop them. 22 years I have tried to be part of this family. 22 years I have tried to earn your approval. And you still cannot even. I stopped. Swallowed. The lump in my throat felt like a stone. You still cannot even call me your daughter. Silence. He just stared at me. His face was blank, not surprised, not guilty, just blank. Like I had said something obvious, something he had been thinking for years but never bothered to say out loud. And in that silence, I found my answer. Can you, I asked. My voice was barely a whisper now. Have you ever, even once? He could have lied. He could have said something kind, something diplomatic. He could have pretended like we all pretend at family gatherings. He could have given me something, anything, to hold on to. But Richard Carter has never been a man who pretends. You were never my daughter, he said. His voice was flat, factual, like he was reading a grocery list. You were an obligation, your mother's baggage. I gave you my name. I gave you a roof. What more did you want? An obligation. That word, it still echoes sometimes. Late at night when I cannot sleep, when the silence gets too loud. An obligation. Not a daughter, not even a child. Just baggage. Something he carried because he had no choice. Something he tolerated because it came with the woman he wanted. My mother. She was standing in the doorway. I did not know how long she had been there. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. But she did not say anything. She never said anything. That was her way. Silence. Avoidance. Peace at any cost, even if the cost was her own daughter. I wanted to be loved. My voice broke on the last word. I hated that it broke. I hated that he could still make me feel like that little girl who used to wait by the window for a father who would never come. Was that too much to ask? He laughed. Not a cruel laugh exactly. More like a dismissive one. The kind of laugh you give a child who says something naive. The kind of laugh that says you should know better by now. Love is earned, Elise. You never earned it. I left that night. I did not say goodbye to Brooke. I did not hug my mother. I did not take my coat. I just left. Drove to the airport in the rain, caught the first flight back to California, and cried the entire way. The flight attendant asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I was not fine. But what else could I say? And I had not been back since. Standing in my villa now 6 months later, I walked to the desk by the window. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the emptiness. Click, click, click. Like a countdown to something. There was a photograph there in a silver frame. Old, faded. The colors had that washed-out quality of pictures from the 90s. A man holding a little girl on his shoulders, both of them laughing at something off camera. My father. My real father. David Mitchell. I picked up the frame, running my thumb over the glass. The glass was cold. Everything in this house was cold tonight. I was 5 in this photo. He died when I was 6. Car accident on a rainy night coming home from work. One moment he was there, and then he was not. Just like that. A phone call, a hospital, a funeral I barely remember. I do not remember his voice anymore, just the echo of it. The feeling of being lifted onto his shoulders, the way he used to call me my little star, the way his laugh sounded, before I forgot what it sounded like. Would things have been different if he had lived? Would I still be standing here alone on my sister's wedding night? Would I have become this person, this driven, guarded, successful person who could not let anyone in? I set the photograph down. There was no point in asking questions that could never be answered. He was gone. And I got Richard instead. That was the trade life made for me. A father who adored me, for a man who tolerated me. Some trades are not fair. You just have to live with them anyway. My work phone buzzed on the desk. I knew who it was before I looked. Maya Vanessa. My co-founder, my best friend, the only person who had been with me since the beginning. Since the Stanford dorm room, since the failed prototypes, since the nights we ate ramen for dinner because we could not afford anything else. She had been calling all night. I had been ignoring her all night. This time I answered. Finally! Maya's voice was relieved and annoyed at the same time. She was good at that combination. 8 years of partnership had given her plenty of practice. I was about to call the police, or fly out there myself, or both. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're hiding in a $40 million bunker while your family plays happy family without you. They're not my family. I know. Her voice softened. That's exactly why I'm worried. I walked back to the window. The city was still there, still sparkling, completely indifferent to my drama. Cities were good at that. They kept moving no matter what happened inside the buildings they contained. The Forbes article drops at midnight, Maya said. You know that, right? I know. Your face is going to be everywhere. $1.2 billion, Elise. That's not exactly a quiet exit. I know. And you're just... What? Going to sit there in the dark alone on the biggest night of your career? Yes. That was exactly what I was going to do. Because the alternative was celebrating a success that felt hollow, or attending a wedding where I was not wanted, or doing anything else that required me to feel something other than this. Whatever this was. You can't buy peace with people who never valued you. Maya's voice was gentle now, the kind of gentle she only used when she was genuinely worried. The kind of gentle that made my eyes sting. You know that, right? No amount of money is going to make them love you. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. The window was freezing. It felt good, something real to focus on. I know. Then why does it still hurt? I did not have an answer for that. I was not sure I wanted one. Do you want me to come over? She asked. I can be there in 20 minutes. We can eat ice cream and watch terrible movies and pretend tomorrow doesn't exist. It sounded perfect. It also sounded exhausting. No, I'm okay. Really. Elise? Maya. I tried to smile even though she could not see it. I'll be fine. I just need... tonight. Tomorrow I'll be the CEO again. Tomorrow I'll do the interviews and shake the hands and be the success story everyone wants me to be. Tonight I just need to be... nothing. She was quiet for a moment. Then, call me if you need me. Anytime. 2 a.m., 4 a.m. I don't care. I mean it. I know you do. That's why I love you. I hung up before she could say anything else. Before she could be kind again. Kindness was dangerous tonight. It might make me cry. And if I started crying, I was not sure I could stop. The clock on my phone read 11:58. 2 minutes until midnight. 2 minutes until the Forbes article went live. 2 minutes until the whole world knew my name. I thought about the journey. Stanford, where I went on a full scholarship because Richard refused to pay a single dollar. The computer science class where I met Maya, where we argued about code architecture and became inseparable. The first version of what would become Nexus AI, written on a refurbished MacBook I bought with my first scholarship check. But on my desk, I always kept another machine. A bulky gray brick from the 90s that hadn't turned on in years. A paperweight. A memory. Richard had seen that code once. Early on, before I really understood what I had. Before the investors came calling. Before the acquisition offers. He had been visiting for some family obligation. I forget which one now. And he watched over my shoulder for about 30 seconds. Then he patted me on the head, like I was a child playing pretend. That's cute, he said, but it's not a real career. That's cute. Those were his exact words. About the algorithm that would later be worth $1,200,000,000. I should thank him, really. Every dismissal became fuel. Every "you can't" became a reason to prove I could. Every time he looked through me instead of at me, I added another 16-hour day to my schedule. 8 years. 16-hour days. Countless setbacks. One investor who believed in me early when no one else would. James Holloway. He had known my father, he said once. Back in college. I never asked more. Maybe I should have. I walked to my office to the drawer where I kept the documents I never looked at. The folder was right where I left it. legal papers, official records, history that I preferred to forget. I pulled out the adoption certificate. Elise Mitchell had become Elise Carter on August 15, 2003. I was 10 years old, still young enough to believe things would get better, still naive enough to hope. Richard had signed on the line for father. My mother had signed as witness. The state of New Jersey had stamped it official. Legally, I was his daughter. I had every right to inheritance. I had every right to be at family events. I had every right to exist in that family. But legal rights and real love, they are not the same thing. You can force a signature. You cannot force a feeling. I closed the folder. Tonight was not about this. Tomorrow. I would think about all of it tomorrow. Midnight. My personal phone, the one I had been ignoring all night, suddenly came alive. Not one notification. Not 10. Hundreds. News alerts, text messages, missed calls, Twitter mentions, Instagram tags, LinkedIn messages. Every app I had was exploding at once. I picked it up with shaking hands. Forbes. The headline filled my screen. $1.2 billion acquisition meet. Elise Carter, the woman behind Nexus AI. My face, my story, my success, everywhere. For 8 years I had worked in relative obscurity. Tech people knew me. Investors knew me. But to the rest of the world, I was nobody. Not anymore. I scrolled through the notifications numb. Congratulations from people I had not spoken to in years, media requests, interview invitations, the algorithm of success doing its thing. And then I saw the calls. Not from investors, not from journalists, from New Jersey. Brooke. 5 missed calls, then 6, then 7. As I watched, another call came in, her name flashing on my screen. I did not answer. I could not. Not yet. But there was a voicemail. I pressed play. Brooke's voice filled the silence, shaking, almost afraid. Elise, what did you do? Dad just saw the news and he can't breathe. Mom is crying. Everyone is asking questions. The reception is ruined. What did you do? What did I do? I built an empire while they built a wedding. I proved my worth while they proved their indifference. I became someone while they were too busy pretending I was no one. The voicemail ended. I stood there, phone in hand, city sparkling below. $40 million view, $1.2 billion in the bank. And somewhere in New Jersey, 3,000 miles away, my family was finally seeing me. That night in my $40 million villa overlooking the bay, I had no idea what was coming. Not for me, for them. The phone kept ringing. I watched Brooke's name flash on my screen for the 8th time. 9th. 10th. Each ring felt like a heartbeat. Each pause between rings felt like a held breath. The city lights sparkled below me indifferent. San Francisco didn't care about wedding dramas in New Jersey. San Francisco didn't care about anything except the next innovation, the next disruption, the next billion-dollar idea. I had given them one of those, and now my family was paying the price. I answered, not because I wanted to, because I was tired of watching it ring. Finally, Brooke's voice exploded through the speaker. Not the calm, poised sister I knew. This was someone unraveling. Do you have any idea what you've done? I said nothing. Let her talk. That was always the safer option with Brooke. She was like Richard that way. She needed to release pressure before she could hear anything. The reception is ruined. Everyone is on their phones. Everyone is looking up your name on my wedding night. Through the phone I could hear it. The absence of music. The murmur of voices. Not the joyful kind. The whispering kind. The kind that happens when something goes wrong at a party. When someone says the wrong thing. When the bride's estranged sister turns out to be a billionaire. Are you even listening to me? I'm listening. Then say something. What was there to say? I had not done anything. I had not called Forbes. I had not scheduled the article. I had not arranged for the news to break at exactly midnight on December 15th. But I had not stopped it either, and some part of me, some honest part, was not entirely unhappy about the timing. Elise, everyone is looking at their phones instead of dancing. The photographer gave up. The DJ is playing music to an empty floor because everyone is in the corner Googling you. I walked to the window. My reflection stared back at me. A woman in a $3,000 dress holding a phone like a weapon watching her sister's world crumble from 3,000 miles away. I had not planned this, but I was not sorry it was happening. Tyler's parents are asking who you are, Brooke continued. Her voice cracked. My husband's parents didn't even know I had a sister. Do you know how that feels? Yes, I knew exactly how that felt. I had been erased from family stories for years. The sister who was not mentioned, the daughter who was not invited, the Carter who was not really a Carter. But I did not say that. What was the point? What do you want me to do, Brooke? I want you to fix this? Fix what? The news is public. The acquisition is real. I cannot unsell my company. Silence. I could hear her breathing. Sharp. Ragged. Like she was trying not to cry. I could picture her standing in some corner of the reception hall, wedding dress pooling around her feet, mascara threatening to run. Dad is having a panic attack. Her voice dropped. He saw the headline and he couldn't breathe. Mom had to take him to the bathroom. They've been in there for 20 minutes. Richard Carter. Having a panic attack. Because of me. I let that sink in for a moment, rolled it around in my mind like a smooth stone. 22 years. 22 years of being invisible. 22 years of being an obligation. 22 years of watching him dote on Brooke while looking through me like I was made of glass. And now, he could not breathe because of what I had become. There was a part of me, a dark, ugly part, that felt satisfied, deeply, shamefully satisfied. And there was another part that felt absolutely nothing at all, like I was watching a movie about someone else's family. Is he okay? The words came out flat, clinical. I was not sure if I cared about the answer. I don't know. Mom says he's fine, but he's not fine. He's talking about lawyers. He's talking about the company. He's talking about... I don't know what he's talking about. Lawyers, of course. Richard always reached for control when he felt out of control. It was his way of processing. Threaten, litigate, dominate. What could lawyers possibly do? I asked. I built this company. I own it. There's nothing illegal about being successful. I don't know, Elise. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a bride. I'm supposed to be dancing with my husband right now, not defending my family's honor to 200 guests who suddenly think we're monsters for not inviting you. There it was. The real wound. Not that I was successful, not that the news was out, but that it made them look bad. Uncle Frank found the SEC filing, Brooke said. It's real. You really sold your company for $1.2 billion. Jesus. I heard her sit down, the scrape of a chair against a floor. Jesus, Elise, when did you? 8 years, Brooke. It took 8 years. You never said anything? No one ever asked. That landed. I heard her inhale sharply. The music had stopped completely now. In the background, I could hear voices. Someone asking what was happening. Someone else saying my name. Elise Carter. Isn't she the sister who wasn't invited? I heard she started some tech company in California. $1 billion. That can't be right. Check it again. I'm telling you, it's right there on Forbes. 1.2 billion. With a B. The whispers carried through Brooke's phone like ghosts. I wondered how many of those people had attended family dinners where I sat in the corner. How many had asked Richard about his kids and heard only about Brooke. They're all talking about you. Brooke's voice was barely a whisper now. This was supposed to be my day, my moment, and they're all talking about you. I closed my eyes. There it was, the same wound that had followed us since childhood, just like I had always stolen things according to them, stolen her mother's attention by existing, stolen resources that should have gone to the real daughter, stolen space in a family that was never meant to include me. Now I had stolen her wedding night. Even when I was not there, I was somehow still the problem. I didn't plan this, Brooke. How can I believe that? Because I don't lie. I never have. That's always been the problem, isn't it? I tell the truth. And this family can't handle the truth. She went quiet. I could hear her thinking, processing. The sounds of the ruined reception fading into background noise. 6 months ago, before the engagement party, before the confrontation with Richard, I was supposed to be at this wedding, not as a guest, as the maid of honor. Brooke had asked me herself, called me on a random Tuesday in January, voice bright and hopeful. "I know we're not always close," she had said, "but you're my sister. I want you there. I want you standing next to me." I had cried when she asked. Actually cried. Alone in my San Francisco apartment, phone pressed to my ear, tears streaming down my face. It was the first time in years that I had felt included. Wanted. Like maybe things could change. I had started writing the speech that same night. To my sister Brooke. We didn't have the same father, but we shared the same roof, the same fights over the bathroom, the same terrible taste in boys. I had worked on that speech for weeks, crafting every word, deleting and rewriting, practicing in front of my mirror at 2 a.m, imagining the moment when Brooke would tear up and the guests would laugh at the jokes and I would finally feel like I belonged to something. I had imagined Richard watching, maybe even smiling, maybe thinking I was wrong about her. The speech was still saved on my laptop, in a folder called Wedding Things. I never deleted it. Some things are too painful to delete. You just leave them there, gathering digital dust, waiting for a moment that will never come. "Elise," Brooke's voice pulled me back to the present, sharper now, calculating. "Did you plan this?" "Plan what?" "The timing. Midnight. On my wedding night. Did you plan this?" I blinked. "What?" "Don't play dumb with me. You're a tech genius, right? You built an entire company from nothing. You have connections everywhere. You're telling me you couldn't have influenced when this article came out." "Brooke, I sold my company. Forbes wrote an article. I don't control Forbes." "But you know people. You have PR teams. You have power." Power? There was that word again. I almost laughed. Almost. It would have been cruel, so I held it in. But she had a point. The timing was strange. Midnight. Exactly midnight. Not 11:58. Not 12:03. Midnight on the dot. Like someone had set a timer. The acquisition had closed 4 days ago. The article could have run any time. Friday morning, Saturday afternoon, Monday when markets opened. Forbes had no reason to wait until midnight on a random Saturday, unless someone asked them to. I hadn't done it. I was certain of that. I had been too busy feeling sorry for myself, too busy drinking wine I never touched, too busy staring out at city lights that didn't care. But Maya. Maya handled PR for Nexus AI. Maya coordinated with Forbes for the announcement. Maya knew the exact timing. Maya knew everything about my family, including Brooke's wedding date. I had told her about it months ago, back when I was still invited. No, she wouldn't. Would she? Maya was protective, fiercely protective. She had watched me cry after the engagement party confrontation. She had held me while I sobbed about Richard's words. She had said, "They don't deserve you." But sabotaging Brooke's wedding, that was too far. Even for Maya. "Wasn't it? I didn't plan this," I said again, slowly. "But you're right. The timing is strange. So someone did this to me on purpose. I don't know, maybe. Maybe it's just coincidence." "There's no such thing as coincidence in your world, Elise. You've said that yourself." She was quoting my own words back at me. I had said that, years ago, when we were still speaking regularly, before the distance became permanent. "Brooke, I need to go." No, you don't get to hang up on me. Not tonight. Not after this. "I'm not hanging up on you, I need to think." "Think about what?" "About how to make this worse. About who might have done this. And why." That stopped her. I could hear her breathing, the gears turning. "You really didn't do it," she said. Half question, half statement. "No." Another pause. Then quieter. "Dad wants to talk to you." My blood went cold. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Not tonight." "Elise, maybe never." He's not angry. He's scared." Scared. Richard Carter. Scared. I had never heard those words in the same sentence before. Richard Carter was many things. Cold, controlling, dismissive, calculating. The kind of man who built a real estate empire by never showing weakness. The kind of man who saw vulnerability as failure. But scared never. Fear was for other people. Fear was weakness, and Richard Carter did not do weakness. Until tonight. What is he scared of? I don't know. You, I think. What you might do. Do. With your money. With your power. I let that word hang in the air. Power. A word I had never associated with myself. I had money now, yes. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But power. That felt like something else entirely. Except, to Richard, money was power. It was control. It was the ability to shape the world according to your will. And suddenly, I had more of it than he did. He wants to know if you're going to do something. Against him. Against the family. I laughed, a short, bitter sound that surprised even me. Is that what he thinks? That I've been plotting revenge? I don't know what he thinks. I don't know what any of us think anymore. You disappeared for 6 months. You didn't call. You didn't answer. And then, this. I disappeared because I wasn't wanted. There's a difference. There's always a difference with you, Elise. There's always another angle, another truth we're supposed to see but don't. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Her voice cracked again. It's my wedding night and my father is hiding in the bathroom and my guests are more interested in my sister's net worth than my marriage and I don't even know what's real anymore. She was crying now, really crying. Not the pretty tears of a bride in a movie. The ugly gasping sobs of someone falling apart at the seams. Part of me wanted to comfort her. She was still my sister even after everything. Part of me wanted to hang up and never speak to any of them again. I did neither. I'm sorry, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth. I'm sorry your night was ruined. That wasn't what I wanted. What did you want, Elise? What do you want? I didn't have an answer. Not one I could say out loud. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to matter to someone who wasn't paying me. But I couldn't say that. Not to Brooke. Not tonight. I need to go, I said instead. Take care of Tyler. Take care of Mom. I'll call you tomorrow. Elise. Good night, Brooke. I hung up before she could say anything else. The silence of the villa rushed back in, thick, heavy, like a blanket made of stone. I stood there for a long moment, phone in hand, watching my reflection in the dark window. The woman who stared back looked tired, successful and tired, rich and empty. My phone buzzed. Text from Maya. Saw the news reaction. You okay? Should I come over? I stared at the words. Maya, my best friend, my co-founder, the person who knew me better than anyone in the world, the person who might have orchestrated this entire thing. No, stop. Maya wouldn't do that. She was protective, yes. Fierce, absolutely. But she wouldn't sabotage Brooke's wedding just to... What, make a point? Get revenge on people she'd never even met. Would she? I didn't answer her text. I would deal with Maya tomorrow. Tonight I had too many questions and not enough answers. Another buzz. This time, an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Another congratulations from someone I barely remembered, probably. Another person crawling out of the woodwork now that I was worth something. But something made me look. Elise, it's your mother. Please call me. There's something you need to know. My mother, Diane Carter, texting me directly. I read the message 3 times, 4 times, waiting for it to change into something that made sense. That never happened. Ever. In 22 years of being Richard's wife, my mother had never once contacted me without going through someone else first. Brooke was the messenger. Richard was the authority. The family group chat was the official channel. But this was direct, private, just between us. There's something you need to know. What could she possibly have to say now? What truth could possibly matter more than all the truths she had let Richard bury over the years? I thought about the woman who had stood in the kitchen doorway 6 months ago, watching Richard tear me apart with his words, saying nothing, doing nothing, choosing silence over her own daughter. I thought about all the years she had made that same choice: peace over protection, silence over support, Richard over me. There's something you need to know. My mother hadn't texted me directly in years. She always went through Brooke. Always. Some part of me, some foolish, hopeful part, wanted to believe she was finally ready to be my mother, to choose me, to stand up. But I had been foolish before, I had hoped before, and hope in this family was always punished. I stared at those words until my screen went dark. Whatever she wanted to tell me, it had waited 22 years. It could wait one more night. But I knew it wouldn't. Some truths have a way of finding you, whether you're ready or not. I stared at my mother's text for an hour. There's something you need to know. 7 words. After 22 years of silence, she had 7 words for me. Not "I love you," not "I'm sorry," not "I should have protected you." Just, "There's something you need to know." The villa was dark around me. I had not turned on any lights since Brooke's call ended. I had just stood there, phone in hand, watching the screen go dark and light up again every time a new notification came in. Congratulations from strangers, interview requests from journalists, messages from people I had not spoken to in years. None of them were the message I was staring at. The city sparkled below, indifferent to my drama, indifferent to my pain. San Francisco never stopped moving. Neither did the world. Somewhere out there, people were celebrating Saturday night, going to bars, having dinner, living their lives. Only I seemed frozen in this moment. I thought about ignoring it. I was good at ignoring things from my family. I had ignored Richard's cruelty for years. I had ignored Brooke's casual dismissals. I had ignored my mother's silence, her absence, her failure to stand up for me even once. What was one more thing to ignore? But something about those words, something about the way she had texted me directly, breaking 22 years of going through intermediaries, it felt different. It felt like the beginning of something, or maybe the end of something. Either way, I needed to know. I called anyway. Some doors once opened demand to be walked through. She answered on the first ring. She had been waiting. That fact alone told me this was serious. My mother was not a woman who waited. She was a woman who avoided. Elise. Her voice was nothing like I expected. Not the composed, careful voice of the woman who hosted dinner parties and smiled through Richard's barbs and pretended everything was fine when nothing was fine. This voice was raw, tired, like she had been crying for hours and had finally run out of tears. You wanted to talk. Yes. Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would. I said nothing. Let the silence do the work. I had learned that from Richard, actually. The power of silence. The way it forced the other person to fill the void. I'm sorry, she continued. About the wedding. About everything, really. But that's not why I texted. Then why? Another pause. I could hear background noise, muffled voices, distant music. The reception was still going, apparently. Life moves on even when families fall apart. Somewhere in New Jersey, people were dancing and laughing and pretending that the bride's sister hadn't just been revealed as a billionaire on the front page of Forbes. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago. My stomach dropped. That familiar feeling of dread that had followed me through childhood. The feeling I got every time Richard called my name. Every time I walked into a room and the conversation stopped. I knew that tone in her voice. It was the tone of someone about to shatter something that could never be put back together. I'm listening. Not on the phone. I should tell you in person. I'm 3,000 miles away, Mom. Whatever it is, just say it. Silence. I could hear her breathing. Shallow. Rapid. The sound of someone working up the courage to do something terrifying. I pictured her standing in some hallway of the reception venue, wedding guests walking by, her face turned away so no one could see her falling apart. "Before I married Richard," she began. Her voice shook. "Before the wedding, before any of it. He sat me down. Just the two of us. He wanted to make something clear." I closed my eyes. I did not want to hear this. Some part of me already knew what was coming. Some part of me had always known. "He told me. He said—" She stopped. Started again. Her voice caught. "He said he would provide for you. He would give you his name. He would put a roof over your head and clothes on your back and make sure you had everything you needed to grow up safe." "But—" The word hung there. We both knew there was a but. "But he would never love you." Her voice broke on the last word, actually shattered like glass hitting concrete. "He told me he would never see you as his daughter. You would always be separate, outside. An obligation he accepted because he wanted me, but not something he would ever embrace. He made that clear, Elise, before I ever walked down the aisle." The world tilted. I reached for the wall. My hand was shaking. My whole body was shaking. The phone almost slipped from my grip. "You knew." It was not a question. It was an accusation. "Before you married him, before you brought him into our home, before you gave him authority over my life, you knew what he would do to me." I thought I could change him. The words tumbled out, desperate pleading. I thought if I was good enough, if I made him happy enough, if I gave him a daughter of his own, I thought he would come around. I thought love would be enough. I thought time would soften him. I thought— "You thought wrong." "Yes." Barely a whisper. I thought wrong. I walked to the window. My legs felt weak. The city lights blurred. I realized I was crying. I did not remember starting. 22 years. 22 years of wondering what was wrong with me. Why I was not good enough. Why Richard looked at Brooke with warmth and pride and love and looked at me with nothing. Less than nothing. Like I was a piece of furniture he had to walk around. And my mother had known. The whole time. From the very beginning. "Every birthday," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant. Like it belonged to someone else. Every single birthday I sat in the corner while he showered Brooke with gifts. While he took pictures with her. While he told her how proud he was. While I pretended the cards with just Mom's signature didn't hurt. I know. Every report card, every school play, every accomplishment I brought home, hoping so desperately that this would be the thing that made him proud. And he just looked through me like I was not even there. I know. Every Christmas morning, every holiday, every family dinner where I sat at the end of the table like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Every time he called Brooke my daughter and called me Elise like I was the neighbor's kid. I know, Elise. I know. And you knew. The word exploded out of me, louder than I intended, louder than I had ever been with her. You knew he would never accept me, and you married him anyway. You brought him into our home. You gave him authority over me. You watched him destroy me piece by piece for 22 years, and you knew. You knew from the beginning. She was sobbing now. Ugly, gasping sobs that came through the phone like punches. Not the delicate crying of a woman at a wedding. The raw, wrecked crying of someone finally facing what they had done. Part of me wanted to comfort her. She was still my mother. Some instinct still wanted to make her feel better. Part of me wanted to hang up and never speak to her again. I did neither. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, tears streaming down my face, waiting for something that would make this make sense. Nothing came. Some things never make sense. Some betrayals are too deep for explanation. I'm sorry. Her voice was wrecked, hollow. I'm so sorry, Elise. I made a terrible choice. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were so young. David had just died. You were grieving. I was grieving. We had nothing. No money, no stability, no future. And Richard offered all of that. So you sold me out. I didn't think of it that way. How did you think of it? Silence. I thought I could have both, she finally said. I thought I could have Richard and his security and his house and his life and still protect you. I thought if I just kept the peace, if I just smoothed things over, if I just stayed quiet and didn't rock the boat, eventually he would see what I saw. How smart you are, how brave, how much you deserved to be loved. But he never did. No, he never did. I laughed. A short, bitter sound that surprised even me. 22 years of my life explained in a few sentences. My mother had made a bet on a man who told her to her face that he would never love her daughter. And I had lost that bet. Every single day for 22 years. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to be prepared. Prepared for what? Richard. Her voice changed. Harder now. More focused. The sobbing stopped. He's not just angry about the Forbes article, Elise. He's scared. And when Richard gets scared, when he feels threatened, he becomes dangerous. Dangerous how? He's talking about lawyers, about the adoption papers, about contesting things, finding angles. I don't understand all of it, but he's been on the phone for the last hour. His lawyer, his accountant, that fixer he uses for his real estate deals. He's planning something. I thought about the adoption papers in my desk drawer, the legal document that made me officially Richard Carter's daughter, signed when I was 10 years old. I had never wanted his money. I had never cared about inheritance. But I was starting to understand that to Richard everything was about control, and he had just lost control of me in the most public way possible. He can't touch my money, I said. I built that company from nothing, with my own hands, my own mind, my own 16-hour days. It's mine. It's not about money, Elise. It's about winning. It's about punishing you for being successful without his help, for proving that you didn't need him, for becoming someone without his permission. I never needed him. I just wanted... I stopped. What had I wanted his approval? His love. A place at the table. All of the above. None of the above. Everything and nothing. You wanted a father, my mother said quietly. You wanted someone to see you, to be proud of you, to love you the way David loved you. And I handed you to a man who was never capable of that, who never wanted to be capable of that. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto the couch suddenly exhausted. My legs could not hold me anymore. Why now? I asked again. Why tell me all of this now after 22 years of silence? Because I'm tired. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm tired of pretending everything is fine. I'm tired of keeping the peace while my daughter suffers. I'm tired of watching him hurt you while I say nothing and do nothing and hate myself a little more every day. You could have said something years ago. I know. You could have left him, taken me somewhere safe. I know. You could have chosen me, just once. Just one time you could have chosen me over him. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It stretched between us like an ocean. 22 years of silence finally spoken. I'm choosing you now, she said finally. I know it's too late. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I can never undo what I've done. But I'm trying. I'm trying to do the right thing. Finally, for once in my miserable life. For once. Finally, the words echoed in my head. For once. Finally. After 22 years, my mother was finally choosing me. Was it enough? Could it ever be enough? He's planning something, she said again. I don't know what exactly, but you need to be ready. You need to protect yourself. Promise me you'll protect yourself. Are you warning me? Yes. Why? Because you're my daughter. Her voice cracked. Whatever Richard says, whatever he believes, whatever lies he tells himself about blood and family and obligation, you are my daughter, and I should have protected you. I should have put you first. I failed at that for 22 years, but I'm not failing now. I did not know what to say. This was the mother I had always wanted, the mother who chose me, who stood up for me, who finally saw me, and she was 22 years too late. I need to go, I said. Elise, I need to think about all of this. I need time. I understand. She paused. Will you call me when you're ready? I don't know. Okay. A shaky breath. Okay, I understand. Just be careful, please. Richard is not the man I thought he was. Maybe he never was. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. I ended the call. The villa was silent again. The city lights sparkled on, indifferent, eternal, unchanged by anything that happened in the lives of the small people below. I sat there for a long time. Minutes. Maybe hours. Time had lost all meaning. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Still awake. Saw you didn't respond. Getting worried. I stared at the message. Maya. My best friend. My co-founder. The person who had been with me through every late night, every failed pitch, every moment of doubt. I thought about calling her, telling her everything. But what would I say? My mother just confessed to selling me out for a nice house and a country club membership? Some truths are too fresh to share. They need time to settle before you can speak them out loud. I typed back, I'm okay, just thinking. We'll call tomorrow. She responded immediately. If you need me, I'm there. You know that. I did know that. Maya was the first person who had ever chosen me without conditions, without strings, without expecting anything in return except my friendship. Unlike my mother, unlike my family, unlike everyone who was supposed to love me from the start. I set the phone down and walked to the window. The city stretched out below me. A million lights, a million lives, a million stories that had nothing to do with mine. What was I going to do? My mother's warning echoed in my head. Richard is dangerous when he feels threatened. He's planning something. Good, let him plan. I had spent 22 years being afraid of Richard Carter, afraid of his disapproval, afraid of his silence, afraid of confirming what I already knew, that he had never wanted me. I was done being afraid. I thought about the maid of honor speech still saved on my laptop, the folder labeled wedding things that I had never been able to delete. The hours I had spent crafting words for a sister who had let me be banned from her wedding without a fight. To my sister, Brooke, we didn't have the same father, but we shared the same roof. The same roof, but never the same love, never the same protection, never the same place at the table. I had two choices. Walk away, take my $1 billion and build a life so far from New Jersey that I would never have to think about the Carters again. Buy a house in Italy. Or Japan, or some island no one had heard of. Start over. Become someone new. Someone without this weight. Someone who had never been an obligation. That was the smart choice. The safe choice. The choice that would cause me the least pain. Or I could go back. Face Richard. Face the man who had spent 22 years making me feel worthless. Face him now when the tables had turned. When I was the one with power. When I was the one who could not be dismissed, not for revenge. I was tired of the word revenge. I wanted closure. I wanted to look him in the eye and say the things I had been too afraid to say for 22 years. I wanted him to hear me. Really hear me. One time before I walked away forever. I wanted to stand in front of him, not as the little girl he rejected, but as the woman I had become. The woman who had built an empire without his help. The woman who had proven beyond any doubt that his rejection was his loss, not mine. The little girl who waited by the window deserved that much. She deserved to be seen, and she deserved an ending. I picked up my phone and opened the airline app. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. There was a flight to Newark at 6 a.m. 3 hours from now. I could be in New Jersey by early afternoon. My finger hovered over the book button. This was either the bravest thing I had ever done, or the stupidest. Maybe both. Maybe it did not matter which. I pressed book. The confirmation appeared on my screen. Flight booked, seat confirmed. One way. Because I did not know when I would be coming back. Or if. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. The same suitcase I had used when I left New Jersey 6 months ago. The night of the engagement party. The night Richard finally said out loud what I had always known. I had packed in tears that night, hands shaking, heart broken. Tonight was different. Tonight I packed with purpose. I folded clothes into the bag methodically, carefully, like I was preparing for battle, because in a way I was. My mother's words echoed in my head. Richard is dangerous when he feels threatened. Good. Let him be dangerous. Let him plan. Let him call his lawyers and his fixers and his army of people who had always protected him from consequences. I had an army too now. Lawyers, accountants, resources he could not imagine. But more than that, I had the truth. I had 22 years of truth that he had never wanted to face. I zipped the suitcase closed and sat on the edge of my bed. The clock read 3:45 a.m., 2 hours until my flight. I thought about calling my mother back, telling her I was coming, asking her something, anything. But no, not yet. This was something I needed to do on my own. I was going home, not to beg, not to apologize, not to make peace. I was going home to finish this, whatever that meant, whatever it cost. The little girl who waited by the window deserved that much. She deserved to be seen. And finally, I was going to make sure she was. The plane lifted off at exactly 6 a.m. I watched San Francisco shrink beneath me, the city that had been my home for 14 years, the city where I had built a company from nothing, the city where I had become someone. Now I was flying back to the place I had tried so hard to escape. I had not slept. My body was exhausted, but my mind would not stop racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mother's voice. "He will never love you." Those were his exact words. And then, I thought I could change him. What a fool I was. What fools we both were. She for believing, me for hoping. 22 years of wondering what was wrong with me, and the answer had been there all along, hiding in my mother's silence, buried under her need for peace, sacrificed for her security. The flight attendant offered me coffee. I shook my head. My stomach was too knotted to accept anything. I felt like I might be sick if I tried to eat or drink. The turbulence inside me was worse than anything the plane could produce. I pulled out my phone before we reached cruising altitude, one last look at the messages that had been flooding in all night. Maya. Where are you? Called 3 times. Getting worried. Please call me back. This isn't like you. Brooke. Mom says you called. What did she tell you? Call me. I mean it, Elise. An unknown number. Miss Carter. This is Robert Hendricks from Thornton and Associates. Mr. Carter has retained our services regarding a family matter. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience. Richard had already lawyered up. Of course he had. That was his response to everything. Lawyers' threats control. The man had never faced a problem he did not try to litigate away. But it was the last message that made me stop scrolling. Daniel. Heard the news. Flying to meet you. We need to talk. I stared at those words. Daniel was coming. Without being asked. Without being told. He had just decided to be there. That was the thing about Daniel Reeves. He never waited for permission to show up. He never asked if he was needed. He just knew. And he came. I thought about the first time we met, a tech conference in Austin 2 years ago. I was on a panel about AI ethics. He was in the audience taking notes. After the session, he approached me with a question so incisive that I talked to him for 3 hours. He was a venture capitalist, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Type 5 on the Enneagram, the observer. He watched the world carefully before deciding how to engage with it. He had asked me to marry him once before. 6 months ago, right after the engagement party disaster. I had said I was not ready. When you're ready, he had said, I'll be here. He was still here, still waiting. And now he was flying across the country because he heard I needed him. I put my phone in airplane mode and leaned back against the headrest. 6 months ago, the night I fled from Richard's house, I had called Daniel from the airport. It was 2 a.m. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. He answered on the first ring. He always answered on the first ring. I'm a mess, I had said that night. I know. I don't know how to be normal. How to have a family that doesn't destroy me. How to trust that someone won't leave, won't hurt me, Won't decide I'm too much work. Won't look at me one day and realize I was never worth the effort. Silence. Then his voice, steady and certain. Elise, I've watched you build a billion-dollar company. I've watched you work 18-hour days and refuse to give up when everyone said you would fail. I've watched you be kind to people who didn't deserve your kindness and strong when you had every right to fall apart. Daniel, you are the most remarkable person I have ever met. And if your family can't see that, then they don't deserve you, not the other way around. I had cried harder then, not from pain, from something else, something I did not have a name for. When you're ready, he had said again. I'll be here, however long it takes. He never pushed, never demanded, never made me feel guilty for my walls. He just stayed. The plane touched down in Newark at 2:37 p.m. Eastern Time. I turned my phone back on and watched the notifications flood in. More messages from Maya, more from Brooke, 2 more from Richard's lawyer. The man was persistent. I would give him that. But persistence meant nothing when you had nothing to threaten with. And Daniel? Landed at JFK, taking car to meet you. Where are you staying? I had not thought about where to stay. My mother's house was obviously out of the question. Richard's territory, enemy ground. I could not face them, not yet. Not until I had a plan. I booked a room at a hotel in the city, somewhere neutral, somewhere safe, somewhere no one would think to look for a billionaire hiding from her own family. Newark Airport had not changed. Same terminals, same crowds, same smell of coffee and jet fuel and recycled air. The same announcements over the speakers. Delays, gate changes, final boarding calls. I had walked through here 1,000 times as a child, holding my mother's hand as we flew to visit relatives, later as a teenager holding my suitcase alone as I traveled back and forth to summer programs that got me out of the house. And then, at 18, walking through these same terminals one last time. The day I left for Stanford. The day I told myself I would never come back. I had been wrong about that. Here I was, 14 years later, back in New Jersey. Now I was walking through arrivals like any other tired traveler. No one looked twice at me. No one knew that the woman in the wrinkled clothes and dark circles under her eyes was worth $1.2 billion. But I did not feel like a billionaire. I felt like a ghost returning to haunt her own life, a stranger in a place that should have been home, but never was. The hotel was modest, anonymous, the kind of place where no one asked questions and no one remembered faces. The carpet was worn. The art on the walls was generic, but the door had a good lock and the windows faced away from the street. I checked in under my company name using a credit card that was not attached to my personal accounts. Paranoid maybe. But Richard had lawyers, and lawyers had ways of finding people. I was not ready to be found. Not until I decided what I wanted to say. I dropped my suitcase on the bed and opened my laptop. Force of habit, check email. Stay on top of things. Pretend that life was still normal when nothing about my life had been normal for... Honestly, had my life ever been normal? Most of the inbox was business. Congratulations on the acquisition. Interview requests from every major publication. Partnership proposals from companies that had ignored me for years. The usual flood of attention that followed any big news. Amazing how many friends you suddenly have when you are worth $1 billion. But one email made me stop. It was from Harrison Webb, my personal lawyer. Not my corporate attorney, my personal one. The man who handled my will, my trusts, my private affairs. The subject line read, R.E. Carter Estate Documents, Confidential. I had not asked Harrison for any Carter documents. I had not asked him for anything related to my family. This was unexpected. I opened the email. Elise, as requested, here are the updated trust documents. However, I have also attached a file from the sealed archives regarding the 1999 estate settlement. Given your recent acquisition and change in status, I believe you now have the right and the leverage to see what was buried. I work for the Carter estate, but my ethical obligation is to the beneficiary. Use this wisely. H. He hadn't CC'd me by accident. Harrison Webb was a shark. He saw the tides turning. Now that I was the one with the power, he was switching sides. A reasonable person would have deleted them. A reasonable person would have waited for the corrected version. A reasonable person would have trusted her lawyer to handle whatever this was. But I had spent 22 years being reasonable with my family, being patient, being understanding. Where had that gotten me? I clicked on the attachments. The first few documents were standard estate paperwork, property records, tax filings. Nothing surprising. Then I opened the last file. It was a scan of something old. The paper was yellowed, the edges soft with age. Handwritten. I zoomed in to read the text. My Elise to be opened on her 18th birthday. My heart stopped. I knew that handwriting. I would know it anywhere. It was the same handwriting from the birthday cards I had kept in a shoebox for 26 years. The cards that stopped coming when I was 6. My father, David Mitchell. He had written me a letter I was supposed to receive on my 18th birthday. I was 32 years old, 14 years late. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely scroll down. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten, every word in my father's careful script. Someone had kept this from me. For 14 years. Someone had stolen my father's last words. A knock on the door made me jump. I closed the laptop, instinctively heart pounding. "Elise, it's Daniel." I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I crossed the room and opened the door. He looked tired, rumpled. He had clearly thrown on whatever was closest and run to the airport. His eyes searched my face, looking for something. Damage, maybe. Signs that I was falling apart. "You look terrible," he said. "Thank you. So do you." I just flew 3,000 miles in the middle seat between a crying baby and a man who smelled like onions. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Almost. "Come in." He stepped inside and looked around the modest room. The unmade bed, the suitcase spilling clothes, the laptop on the desk. "Nice place. It's anonymous. That's what matters." He turned to face me. His expression shifted. Serious now. "What's going on?" Elise Maya called me. "Said you disappeared. Said something happened with your family." My mother told me the truth. About Richard. About everything. "Okay." He sat down on the edge of the bed, ready to listen. Always ready to listen. "Tell me." So I did. All of it. The phone call with Diane, the confession, the revelation that Richard had told her from the beginning that he would never love me, that she had known and married him anyway. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot to process." "I know. And now you're here, in New Jersey, to do what exactly? I don't know." The honesty surprised me. I thought I knew. I thought I was coming here to confront Richard, to, I don't know, get closure, make him see me. And now, I looked at the laptop on the desk, the email I had not finished reading, the letter from my father that I had not yet had the courage to open fully. Now I found something else. I told him about the email, the accidental attachment, the letter from David. Daniel's eyes widened. "Your father wrote you a letter. A letter I was supposed to receive at 18, that I'm only seeing now, at 32. Who had it? Who kept it from you?" "I don't know. My lawyer found it somehow, in some estate file. I haven't read it yet." "Why not?" I looked at the laptop, then back at Daniel. "Because once I read it, everything changes. Again. And I'm so tired of everything changing." He stood up and crossed to where I was standing by the window, took my hand. His grip was warm, steady, the hands of someone who was not going anywhere. "Whatever it says," he said, "I'm here." I looked at him, this man who had flown across the country on a moment's notice, who had asked me to marry him and then waited 6 months without complaint, who was standing in a depressing hotel room in New Jersey, holding my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Why do you stay?" I asked. "I'm a disaster. My family is a disaster. I push people away. I work too much. I don't know how to..." "How to what?" "How to let someone love me." He smiled. That gentle, patient smile that I had fallen in love with 2 years ago. "Then we'll figure it out together. That's kind of my whole thing, Elise." He took a breath. His grip on my hand tightened. Marry me. I blinked. What? Marry me. Not because of the money, not because of your family, because I've loved you for 2 years, and I'm tired of waiting for you to believe you deserve it. My throat tightened. Words piled up behind my lips, unable to escape. Daniel? You don't have to answer now. But I needed you to know. Whatever happens with your family, whatever is in that letter, I'm not going anywhere. I'm choosing you, the way you deserve to be chosen. The way I deserve to be chosen. No one had ever said that to me before. Ask me again, I said. My voice came out rough, broken. When this is over. Ask me again when this is over. He nodded, leaned forward and kissed my forehead. I'll ask you every day if that's what it takes. He was exhausted. We both were. He fell asleep on the couch around 9, still in his rumpled clothes, refusing to leave, even when I told him I was fine alone. I was not fine alone. I never had been. I had just gotten good at pretending. I sat by the window for a long time watching the lights of the city that had shaped my childhood. Somewhere out there in a house I had not visited in 6 months, my mother was awake. My stepfather was plotting. My sister was probably still crying over her ruined wedding. And I was here, in a hotel room, holding a letter from my dead father. The letter I still had not opened. I walked to the desk, opened the laptop, pulled up the scanned document again. My Elise to be opened on her 18th birthday. My hands were steady now. Whatever this was, I needed to know. I scrolled down, past the envelope image, to the letter itself, my father's words, preserved for 26 years, waiting for me. My darling Elise, if you're reading this, I didn't make it. I'm so sorry. I promised you I would always be there, and I have broken that promise. There are no words to tell you how much that hurts me. But I want you to know something. You are the light of my life. From the moment you were born, everything I did was for you. Every late night at work, every sacrifice, every dream for the future, it was all for you. I don't know what your life will look like when you turn 18. I hope it is full of love. I hope your mother has found happiness. I hope you have grown into the brilliant, fierce, beautiful person I always knew you would become. But I also know your mother, and I know her fears, her need for security, her tendency to choose safety over risk. If she has remarried, if there is another man in your life, I need you to know something. I have made provisions for you, my little star, a trust in your name. Your mother knows. She has the documents. When you turn 18, this will be yours. No one can take it from you. Not even the man she might marry after I'm gone. The account is with First National Bank of New Jersey. The account number is... I stopped reading. A trust fund. For me. Set up 26 years ago. My father had tried to protect me. From beyond the grave. He had known, somehow known, that I might need protection. And someone had buried his last wish. I looked at the letter again. At the date. At the account number he had written so carefully. A trust fund. That I had never received. Money that was supposed to be mine at 18. Money that could have paid for college without begging Richard. Money that could have changed everything. 26 years of lies. And my mother knew. She had always known. The trust fund. The letter. My father's final gift to me. Buried. Hidden. Stolen. By the people who were supposed to love me. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. My father. The man I barely remembered. The man who died when I was 6 years old. He had known, somehow known, that I would need protection. That the man my mother chose would not love me. And he had tried. From beyond the grave he had tried. A trust fund. Real money. Money that could have changed everything. I did the math in my head. If this trust had been compounding for 26 years, even a modest initial investment would be significant now. Enough for college without Richard's strings. Enough for a down payment on a home. Enough for freedom. But I had never received it. Because someone had buried my father's last wish. My mother knew. She had the documents. That is what the letter said. She had always known. 22 years of watching Richard reject me. 22 years of keeping silent. And the whole time, she had been sitting on this. My father's gift. my inheritance, my lifeline. Had she spent it? Had Richard taken it? Had they both decided together that I did not deserve what my father left me? I thought about calling her, screaming at her, demanding answers. But I was too tired for screaming, and too angry for words. Tomorrow. I would deal with this tomorrow, when I had slept, when I could think clearly, when the rage had settled into something I could use. I looked at Daniel still sleeping on the couch, his face peaceful, untroubled. He had asked me to marry him, to choose him, to believe that I deserved to be loved. Maybe I did deserve it. Maybe I had always deserved it. Maybe the problem was never me. It was the people I trusted to tell me my worth. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Somewhere out there in a house I had not visited in 6 months, my family was awake. Plotting, planning. They thought they knew what was coming. They had no idea. 26 years of lies. And I was only now learning the truth. But now that I knew, there was no going back. Not for me. And not for them. I slept for 3 hours. It was the kind of sleep that leaves you more tired than before, restless, full of dreams that dissolve the moment you open your eyes. I dreamed of my father, of his voice reading me bedtime stories, of the way he used to call me his little star, of the letter I had found too late, 26 years too late. When I woke, Daniel was already up. He sat in the chair by the window laptop, opened 2 cups of coffee on the table. The morning light made him look tired, older than his 35 years. He had been working while I slept, researching, planning. That was his way, turning chaos into data, emotions into strategy. "Morning," he said. His eyes searched my face, looking for damage. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been hit by a truck." I sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. And then the truck backed up and hit me again. He handed me the coffee without commenting on my appearance. It was still warm. He must have just gotten it. The small kindness of it, the fact that he had timed it to when I would wake up, made my chest tight. "How long have you been awake?" I asked. "A few hours. I couldn't sleep either." He paused. "I kept thinking about that letter, about what it means." I took a sip. The coffee was strong. "Good. I needed strong." "I read it again," I said. "After you fell asleep. 3 times. 4. I kept hoping I had misunderstood something, that there was another explanation. And there isn't. My father set up a trust fund. $300,000. At least that's what the letter suggested. That was a lot of money in 1999. For a regular family like ours, it was a fortune. It would be worth significantly more now, if it had been invested properly. If. I set down the cup. My hands were steadier than I expected. But it wasn't invested. It was stolen. By my own mother. Daniel closed his laptop and gave me his full attention. "What do you want to do?" 26 years. She had 26 years to tell me. 26 years of watching me struggle while she sat on the secret of what she had done. 26 years of letting me believe I was worthless, when the truth was that I had been worth $300,000 to someone, just not to her. "I want answers," I said. "Real answers. Not more excuses, not more tears, not more apologies that change nothing." "Then let's get them." I liked the sound of that, the we in that sentence, the fact that I wasn't doing this alone, not anymore. First, I called the bank. First National Bank of New Jersey, the number my father had written in his letter 26 years ago. His handwriting preserved on that yellowed paper, reaching across time to tell me something I should have known decades ago. It took 30 minutes to get to someone who could actually help me. I was transferred 3 times, put on hold twice. I gave them the account number, spelled my father's name, explained that I was the beneficiary, asked about the status of the trust. The woman on the phone was polite, professional, the kind of voice that delivers bad news without emotion because she delivers bad news all day long. "That account was closed in August of 2003, ma'am." August 2003. 2 weeks before Richard adopted me. 2 weeks before I became Elise Carter. 2 weeks before the man who would spend 22 years rejecting me made it official on paper. Can you tell me who closed it? The surviving trustee, a Diane Mitchell, and she withdrew the full balance on August 3rd. The full balance. Every penny my father had left me. Withdrawn 12 days before my mother walked down the aisle with Richard Carter. How much was the balance at the time of withdrawal? A pause. Papers shuffling. Keyboard clicking. $312,467. Over $300,000. More than enough to pay for college without begging Richard for help. More than enough for a down payment on a home of my own. More than enough to give me options. Real options. That didn't depend on Richard Carter's approval. Gone. All of it. Vanished into my mother's new marriage. My inheritance converted into whatever Richard needed to accept us into his life. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else entirely. You've been very helpful. Is there anything else I can help you with, ma'am? No. I think I have everything I need. I hung up. Daniel was watching me, waiting, patient as always. She took it, I said. All of it. The day before she married Richard. He didn't say anything. Just reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was warm, solid. The only thing anchoring me to the present moment. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was cautious, hopeful. Elise, we need to meet. Now, not at the house. Somewhere neutral. Silence. Then, is this about what I told you about Richard? This is about something else. Something you should have told me 26 years ago. I heard her breath catch. She knew. Of course she knew. There's a diner on Main Street, she said. The one with the blue awning. I can be there in 30 minutes. I'll be there in 20. The diner was exactly as I remembered it. My mother used to bring me here when I was a child before she married Richard, before everything changed. We would sit in the back booth and share a slice of apple pie, and she would tell me stories about my father, about how they met, about how much he loved me. I wondered now how many of those stories were lies. The booths were cracked red vinyl, the coffee was mediocre, the pie was excellent. I used to think this place was magical. A secret hideaway where it was just me and my mother before Richard, before Brooke, before I became invisible. I did not order pie. My mother arrived looking like she had aged 10 years overnight. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail I had never seen her wear. Her clothes were wrinkled. The same clothes from yesterday, maybe. This was not the polished woman who hosted garden parties and smiled through Richard's cruelty and pretended everything was fine when nothing was fine. This was someone falling apart at the seams. Good. Let her fall apart. She slid into the booth across from me. Her hands were shaking badly enough that she knocked over the salt shaker. She didn't pick it up. You found out, she said. Not a question. A surrender. Yes. How? My lawyer found documents, estate papers from when Dad died, including a letter. I watched her face as I spoke, watched the color drain away like water down a sink. A letter I was supposed to receive on my 18th birthday. A letter that explained about the trust fund he set up for me. The trust fund you stole. She closed her eyes. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Maybe she was praying. Maybe she was trying to find words that didn't exist. $300,000, Mom. He left me $300,000 to make sure I would be okay. To make sure I would have choices. And you took it. Elise, you took my inheritance. You took my father's last gift to me. The last thing he ever gave me. And you handed it over to Richard Carter. The words hung between us like smoke. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. I was desperate, she whispered. You have to understand. I was alone. David was gone. I had no money, no job, no way to support us. Richard was... He was offering us a life, a good life, a home. So you bought his acceptance with my future. He said he wouldn't marry me unless I contributed. Her voice broke. He said he needed proof that I was worth the trouble, worth taking on a widow with a child. He needed capital for his business. He was just starting out. He said if I invested in him, he would invest in us. Invested. The word tasted like poison. You invested my father's life insurance in a man who would spend the next 22 years treating me like garbage. I thought it would work out. I thought he would grow to love you. You thought wrong. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, making no effort to wipe them away. The other diners were starting to stare. He used the money as a down payment, she said. On the house you grew up in, your bedroom, your whole childhood. It was built on my father's money. Money that was meant for me. I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. I couldn't look at her face and see 26 years of lies reflected back at me. Elise, please. I don't know what you want me to say, Mom. That I forgive you, I don't. That I understand, I don't. You stole from me. You lied to me. You let Richard treat me like an obligation for my entire life while knowing that you had already taken everything my father left me. I know. Her voice was barely audible. I know what I did. I've lived with it every day. Good. Live with it some more. I walked out of the diner. Daniel was waiting in the car. He didn't ask how it went. He didn't need to. He just started the engine and drove. Back at the hotel, my phone was ringing. Harrison Webb. Miss Carter, I have news. And I'm afraid it's not good. I sat down on the edge of the bed. What is it? Richard Carter's lawyer has been in contact. They're threatening legal action. What kind of legal action? They want to contest the adoption, claim it was based on fraudulent misrepresentation. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Fraudulent misrepresentation by whom? By your mother. They're claiming she deceived Richard about her financial situation, that she didn't disclose the existence of the trust fund. If they can prove she hid assets during the marriage negotiation, they might be able to argue the adoption was based on false pretenses. That's insane. The trust fund was mine, not hers. She already spent it. I know, but the legal argument isn't about logic. It's about leverage. If they can create enough doubt, enough complexity, they can tie you up in litigation for years. What's the real goal? Harrison paused. The real goal is to erase you. If the adoption is voided, you're no longer Richard Carter's legal daughter. You have no claim to his estate, no connection to his family name, no standing to contest anything he might do. I don't want his estate. I don't want his name. I never wanted anything from him except... I stopped. What had I wanted? Acceptance, love. Basic human decency. All of the above, none of which he was capable of giving. Miss Carter, I need to warn you. If Richard starts digging into the adoption, he might find other things. Things your mother buried. Things about your father's estate that could complicate matters. What kind of things? I'm not sure yet. But there are irregularities in the paperwork from 1999. When your father died, some of the documentation doesn't quite add up. I'm looking into it. After Harrison hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Daniel was on his laptop again, doing what he did best. Digging. I found something, he said finally. Good something or bad something? I'm not sure yet. He turned the screen toward me. Richard's company, Carter Real Estate. It's been struggling for about 5 years. Quietly. He's been keeping up appearances, but the numbers don't lie. Okay, and he has a silent investor, someone who's been keeping the company afloat, writing checks covering shortfalls, making sure the whole thing doesn't collapse. Who? That's where it gets interesting. Daniel clicked to another screen. The investor is hidden behind 3 shell companies. Took me hours to trace. But the money all leads back to one place. He showed me the name. I stared at it. James Holloway. The same James Holloway who was one of the first investors in Nexus AI. The same James Holloway who told you he believed in your vision. The same James Holloway who knew my father in college. Daniel nodded. Why would your father's college friend be secretly funding your stepfather's company? I had no answer. Nothing about this made sense. James Holloway had approached me 3 years ago at a tech conference. He said he had been following my career. He said I reminded him of someone he knew a long time ago. He said he wanted to be part of my journey. I had been flattered, grateful. He was one of the first serious investors to take a chance on me. But now I was starting to wonder if any of it had been coincidence. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Hello, Miss Carter." A voice I didn't recognize. Male, older, cultured. "I think it's time we met." "Who is this?" "Someone who knew your father. Someone who's been waiting a very long time for you to find that letter." My heart stopped. "James." Silence, then soft and careful. "Your mother isn't the only one who's been keeping secrets, and your stepfather isn't the only threat." "What does that mean?" "It means you've been playing checkers, Miss Carter. But this has always been chess." "I don't understand." "You will. When we meet. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., the coffee shop on Maple Avenue, 2 blocks from your hotel." "How do you know where I'm staying?" A soft laugh. "Miss Carter, I've been watching over you since the day your father died. I know everything." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. My hand was trembling. "What is it?" Daniel was on his feet. "Elise, what's wrong?" "That was him. James Holloway. He wants to meet tomorrow." And he said something that doesn't make sense. I looked up at Daniel. "He said he's been watching over me since the day my father died. He said this has always been chess." "What does that mean?" "I don't know." I set down the phone. "But I'm starting to think this isn't about Richard at all." I walked to the window. The city lights spread out below me, the same view I had watched my whole life without really seeing. I had come to New Jersey for closure, for answers, for revenge, maybe, though I hated that word. I thought I understood the story. Cruel stepfather, enabling mother, stolen inheritance, classic family drama. But this was something else, something older, something that started before my mother remarried, maybe before my father died. I thought I was the player, making my moves, taking control of my own story for the first time in 32 years. But someone else had been moving the pieces all along. James Holloway, the man who invested in me, the man who funded my stepfather, the man who knew my father. What game was he playing? And more importantly, what role had I been playing in it without knowing tomorrow I would find out? Tomorrow I would finally learn the truth. But standing there in that hotel room watching the lights flicker in the distance, I had the strangest feeling. The feeling that everything I thought I knew was wrong. That the story I had been telling myself for 32 years, the story of the unwanted daughter, the obligation, the outsider, was just the surface of something much deeper, much darker. My father had died when I was 6. A car accident, a rainy night. That was what I had always been told. That was what everyone believed. But Harrison said there were irregularities, questions that someone had buried. And now James Holloway, a man who knew my father, was claiming he had been watching over me since David died. Why? Why would anyone need to watch over a 6-year-old girl unless there was something to protect her from? Unless there was something worth watching? I thought about the trust fund. $300,000 was a lot of money. But it wasn't the kind of money that started conspiracies. It wasn't the kind of money that made people hide letters for 26 years. Unless there was more. Unless the trust fund was just the beginning. Daniel came to stand beside me at the window. His reflection overlapped with mine in the dark glass. 2 people looking out at a city full of secrets. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking, I don't know who my father really was. I have memories, stories my mother told me, a letter written 26 years ago, but I don't know him. Not really. And James Holloway does. He says he knew him in college. He says he's been watching me since Dad died." I turned to look at Daniel. What if there's more to my father's story? What if the car accident? What if it wasn't an accident? Daniel didn't dismiss the idea. He didn't tell me I was being paranoid. He just nodded slowly, considering it. "Tomorrow," he said. "We'll find out tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word felt heavy, loaded with possibility and danger. I had come to New Jersey to confront my stepfather, to get closure on 22 years of rejection, to claim my place in a family that had never wanted me. But that wasn't the story anymore. The story was bigger now, older, more dangerous. And I was just starting to understand that I had never known the whole truth. Not about my mother, not about Richard, not about the trust fund, and maybe not about my father either. Whatever was coming next, I wasn't ready for it. No one could be ready for it. Because you can't prepare for a game when you don't even know the rules. And someone had been making up the rules for a very long time. The coffee shop was quiet when I arrived. 8:55 in the morning. The breakfast rush had ended and the lunch crowd hadn't started. Just a few scattered customers. A woman with a laptop typing furiously and occasionally sighing at whatever she was writing. A man reading a newspaper, the old-fashioned kind, turning pages with deliberate slowness. A young couple sharing a muffin and pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. I envied them. All of them. Their ordinary problems. Their simple lives. I chose a booth in the corner, back to the wall, clear view of the door. Daniel had wanted to come with me, had practically begged to be there, but I needed to do this alone. Whatever James Holloway was going to tell me, I needed to hear it without witnesses, without someone else's reactions clouding my own, without worrying about being strong for anyone but myself. The waitress brought me coffee. I wrapped my hands around the cup but didn't drink. The warmth was enough. Something solid to hold on to while my world was about to shift again. My phone buzzed. Daniel. I'm right outside, 2 blocks away. If you need me, I'm there in 60 seconds. I typed back, I know, thank you. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. That was the thing about Daniel. He said what needed to be said, and then let the silence speak for itself. At exactly 9 o'clock, the door opened. James Holloway walked in like a man who owned every room he entered. Silver hair perfectly styled, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He was older than I remembered from our meetings at Nexus AI. Or maybe I just hadn't been paying attention before. Too focused on the investment numbers. Too grateful for the capital. Too desperate to see anything except what I wanted to see. Now I looked at him differently. Now I saw the way his gaze swept the room before settling on me. The way he noted every exit, every occupied table, every potential witness. The way he carried himself like someone who had been keeping secrets for a very long time. And was very, very good at it. He ordered coffee at the counter. Black, no sugar, no cream. Then he walked to my booth and sat across from me, studying my face with an intensity that made my skin prickle. You look like him, he said. His voice was softer than it had been on the phone, almost gentle, almost human. More than you know. Like who? Your father, David. The words hit me harder than they should have. I had been told I looked like my mother my entire life. I had been told I had her eyes, her smile, her way of tilting my head when I was thinking. No one, not once in 32 years, had ever said I looked like David. Thank you for meeting me, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. A lifetime of hiding emotions from Richard had taught me that much. James smiled, not warmly, knowingly, like he could see right through the mask I was wearing. I've been waiting for this conversation for 26 years, Miss Carter. Thank you for finally being ready to have it. I didn't know there was a conversation to have, until recently. No, you didn't. He took a sip of his coffee. But that's not your fault. You were a child, and the people around you. They made sure you never asked the right questions. I leaned forward. You said you've been watching me since my father died. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. I've kept track of you, your schools, your achievements, your struggles. When you applied to Stanford, I made sure your application reached the right desk. When you started Nexus AI, I made sure you had the capital you needed to survive the first year. That's stalking. That's protection. His eyes were cold, certain. Your father asked me to watch over you, before he died. He knew something was coming. He wanted to make sure. If anything happened to him, that you would be taken care of. If anything happened, my voice caught. He died in a car accident. A random accident. James set down his coffee cup, slowly, deliberately. Tell me something, Elise. What do you know about your father's work? I frowned. Not much. He worked for a financial company, something with investments and auditing. My mother never talked about it. I was 6 when he died. I didn't understand. He was an auditor, a forensic accountant specifically. One of the best in the industry. James paused. Do you know what forensic accountants do? They investigate financial crimes, fraud, embezzlement. Exactly. And your father was very, very good at his job. Too good, as it turned out. I felt something shift in my chest, a door opening that I hadn't known was there. What did he find? James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low, careful. He found a Ponzi scheme, a massive one. Billions of dollars flowing through shell companies, fake investments, fabricated returns. The kind of fraud that destroys lives. Entire retirement funds wiped out, families bankrupted, all to enrich a handful of partners at the top. And my father was going to expose it. He had already compiled the evidence, hundreds of pages of documentation, bank records, transaction histories, enough to bring down the entire operation and send everyone involved to prison for the rest of their lives. My hands were shaking. I set down my coffee cup before I spilled it. What happened? Someone found out. Someone inside the company discovered that David was preparing to go to the SEC, and they decided to stop him. James looked at me. His eyes held something that might have been grief, or rage, or both. Your father didn't die in a car accident, Elise. He was murdered. The world stopped. I heard the words. I understood them individually. But together they didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. They were impossible. Murdered. My father? David Mitchell. The man who called me his little star. The man whose face I could barely remember. The man who had been reduced to a photograph in a silver frame and a collection of stories that might or might not have been true. Murdered. No. I was shaking my head. My whole body was shaking. That's not possible. The police investigated. They said it was an accident. The brakes failed. It was raining. He lost control of the car. He hit a tree. It was a tragedy. A random tragedy. The brakes didn't fail. James's voice was flat, clinical, the voice of someone who had lived with this truth for 26 years. They were tampered with, cut actually, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. No. And the police investigation was compromised from the start. The company had connections, people in high places, money in the right pockets. The detective who caught the case, he retired 6 months later with a new boat and a condo in Florida. The case was closed before it was ever really opened. No. I was still shaking my head, still refusing to accept it. My mother would have known. She would have questioned it. She would have... I stopped. My mother. Who had taken my inheritance 2 weeks before marrying Richard? Who had stood in doorways and watched Richard tear me apart and said nothing? Who had kept secrets for 26 years? Who had told me just days ago that Richard had warned her from the start that he would never love me? What else had she kept secret? What else did she know? Who? My voice was barely a whisper, barely human. Who killed my father? James reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Old, faded. 3 men in suits standing in front of a corporate building. The scheme was run by 3 partners. The 2 on the left are dead now. Natural causes, supposedly. Heart attacks, strokes, the kind of deaths that come to men who live with too much stress and too many secrets. He pointed to the 3rd man, young, ambitious, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But this one is still alive. He was the youngest of the 3, the most ruthless. He's the one who discovered your father's investigation, and he's the one who arranged to have him killed. I looked at the photograph, at the young man's face, at the cold calculation in his expression. I already knew. Somehow before James said the name, I already knew. Richard, I said. Richard Carter. Richard Carter. The coffee shop seemed to blur around me. The sounds faded to static. All I could see was that face, 26 years younger, but the same eyes, the same emptiness where warmth should be. He murdered my father. The words came out flat. Dead. And then he married my mother. Yes. Why? I couldn't understand. I couldn't make it make sense. If he killed my father, why would he marry into our family? Why would he adopt me? Because your father had hidden copies of the evidence. Somewhere. David told me he had a backup plan. Documents that would surface if anything happened to him. Richard spent months tearing apart your father's office, his files, his computer. He found nothing. So he thought your mother might know where the documents were, or that they might be hidden somewhere in your home. So he inserted himself into your life, became your stepfather, gained access to everything. The trust fund, $300,000. My mother had given it to Richard as a down payment on the house, but that wasn't why he married her. The money was just a bonus. He married her to search for evidence that could destroy him. 22 years, I said. My voice sounded strange, far away. He spent 22 years in our house, looking, and making sure you never looked yourself. Think about it, Elise. Think about how he treated you. The constant dismissal, the rejection, the message over and over that you were worthless, that you didn't matter, that your past didn't matter. I thought about it, about every birthday ignored, every achievement dismissed, every time he made me feel like I was less than nothing. He wanted me broken. He needed you broken, too damaged to ask questions, too desperate for his approval to ever look at your father's death, too focused on surviving the present to investigate the past. And my mother... James's expression shifted. Something darker moved behind his eyes. Your mother is... complicated. I don't know how much she knew, or when she knew it. But she made her choice. She chose security over truth, comfort over justice. I can't tell you whether she was a victim or an accomplice. That's something you'll have to discover yourself. I sat in silence for a long time, processing, trying to fit 26 years of memories into this new framework. My entire life had been a lie. My stepfather wasn't just cruel. He was a murderer. My mother wasn't just weak. She might have been complicit in covering up my father's death. And I had spent 3 decades never knowing, never questioning, never looking. Because that was exactly what Richard wanted. You had the evidence all along, I said finally. You said my father gave you copies. Why didn't you expose Richard yourself? James reached into his jacket again. This time he pulled out a manila envelope. Thick, heavy. He slid it across the table toward me. Because I didn't have the smoking gun. I had suspicions. I had copies of financial ledgers that proved fraud, but nothing that proved murder. If I had moved too soon, Richard would have destroyed the evidence and buried us both. Your father told me he hid the originals, the tapes, the signed confessions somewhere safe. Somewhere only you would end up with. I've been waiting 26 years for you to find them. I stared at the envelope. My father's last gift, his final weapon. I've kept these safe for 26 years, James said, waiting for the right moment. And now you're a billionaire. Now you have resources that Richard can't match. Now you can destroy him, if that's what you choose. I picked up the envelope. It was lighter than I expected. Evidence of murder, evidence of fraud, 26 years of secrets contained in a few sheets of paper. Why now? I asked. Why is this the right moment? Because Richard is getting desperate. His company is failing. He's been living off my money for years, and that well is about to run dry. When he saw the Forbes article, when he realized how much you're worth, he saw an opportunity. And a threat. What kind of opportunity? Control of your assets. If he can find a way to gain legal authority over your money, he solves all his problems. And if you start digging into the past, if you discover what he did, he has to stop me. Yes. James leaned forward. His voice dropped. There's something else you should know. Richard isn't just planning to contest the adoption. He's planning to have you declared mentally unstable. unfit to manage your own affairs. What? If he succeeds, he can petition to become conservator of your estate. $1 billion, under his control, and you, locked away somewhere unable to threaten him. The air left my lungs. He's going to try to have me committed. He's going to try to take everything. Your money, your freedom, your life, if necessary. How do you know this? Because I still have people inside his company, and they just heard him make a phone call to a psychiatrist, someone who specializes in involuntary commitments, someone who owes Richard favors. I stood up, the envelope clutched in my hand. My legs felt weak, but my mind was clear, clearer than it had been in years, maybe clearer than it had ever been. My father was murdered, by the man who raised me, by the man who told me I was worthless, by the man who made me feel like an obligation for 22 years. All of it, all the cruelty, all the rejection, all the pain. It wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It wasn't because I failed to earn his love. It was because he killed my father. And every time he looked at me, he saw evidence of his crime. My mother knew something. Maybe everything. Maybe nothing. I couldn't be sure anymore. The woman I thought I knew. The weak but loving mother who just wanted peace. She might be something else entirely. A victim. An accomplice. A stranger. I didn't know who she was anymore. I didn't know who anyone was. And now Richard was coming for me. Not with cruelty this time, not with dismissal and neglect and the slow erosion of my self-worth. With lawyers, with doctors, with the full force of a man who had already killed once to protect his secrets. A man who would not hesitate to kill again. I had come to New Jersey for closure. I had found something else entirely. I had found the truth. About my father, about my family, about the life I had been living without understanding. The prison I had built around myself without knowing there were walls. And now I had a choice. Walk away, take my $1 billion and disappear to some island no one had ever heard of. Let Richard live out his days in comfort. Let my father's murder go unavenged. Let the secrets stay buried forever. That was the safe choice, the smart choice, the choice that would keep me alive. Or I could stay, fight, finish what David Mitchell started 26 years ago, expose Richard for what he was, tear down everything he had built on the foundation of my father's grave. It wasn't really a choice at all. "Thank you," I said to James, "for waiting, for protecting me, for keeping your promise to him." "What are you going to do?" I looked at the envelope in my hands, my father's last gift, his final weapon, 26 years of secrets waiting to explode. "I'm going to destroy him." James nodded slowly. For the first time since I had known him, something like warmth flickered in his eyes, something like pride. "Your father would be proud." I walked out of the coffee shop into the cold December morning. The sun was bright. The streets were busy with people going about their ordinary lives. Shopping, walking, laughing at things that seemed important. None of them knew that the woman walking past them was carrying evidence of a 26-year-old murder. None of them knew that a war was about to begin. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel. "I'm coming back to the hotel," I said. "We need to talk." "Are you okay?" Was I okay? I didn't even know how to answer that question anymore. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. My father was murdered. My stepfather was the killer. My mother might have been complicit. And now someone was planning to have me committed to steal my fortune. No. I was not okay. But I was alive. I was angry. And I had something I hadn't had before. I had the truth. "I'm not okay," I said. "But I'm going to be. Once this is over, I'm going to be." I ended the call and started walking. I had come to New Jersey for closure. I was going to leave with justice. Or I was going to die trying. There was no third option anymore. Not for me. And not for Richard Carter. I walked back into the hotel room feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Stupid, dangerous, fragile hope. The kind that gets you hurt. The kind that makes the fall even worse when it comes. The kind that I had trained myself to suppress for 22 years. Because hoping for anything in Richard Carter's house was a recipe for heartbreak. But I couldn't help it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I could see a path forward. A way out. A chance to make things right. Daniel was waiting for me. He stood up the moment I walked through the door, searching my face for answers. He had been pacing. I could tell from the way the carpet was disturbed. Back and forth, waiting for news that would change everything. Well, I set the envelope on the table. James Holloway's gift, 26 years of patience. My father's last weapon preserved across decades by a man who had kept a promise to his dying friend. David was murdered, I said. The words came out flat, clinical, like I was reading from a script, maybe because saying it any other way would break me. Richard arranged it. He was part of a Ponzi scheme at my father's company. Dad found out and was going to expose them. So they killed him, cut his brake lines, made it look like an accident. Daniel didn't speak. He didn't offer platitudes or expressions of shock. He just crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me. I let myself be held, just for a moment, just long enough to remember what it felt like to not be completely alone in the world.
"What do we do?"
he asked finally. His voice was steady. The voice of a man who had made his choice and wasn't looking back. "We go to the authorities, the FBI, the SEC. We give them everything James gave me, the documents, the evidence, his testimony. We blow this whole thing wide open. And they'll believe you. They'll have to investigate, that's all I need. A real investigation, not the corrupted one from 26 years ago. A real one, with real detectives who can't be bought. After all this time, someone finally looking at the truth." I pulled back and looked at him. At this man who had dropped everything to fly across the country for me, who had proposed to me in the middle of a crisis and then waited patiently when I said I wasn't ready, who was standing here in a dingy hotel room in New Jersey ready to help me fight a battle that wasn't his to fight. "We can do this," Daniel said. His voice was certain. "We have the evidence. We have James. We have the truth." For the first time in days, I believed him. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Miss Carter." A voice I recognized. Robert Hendricks, Richard's lawyer. "I'm calling as a courtesy." "A courtesy. The petition has been filed. I thought you should know before the official notification arrives." My blood went cold. "What petition?" "For emergency conservatorship. Over you and your estate." The room seemed to tilt. I reached for the edge of the table to steady myself. "On what grounds?" "Mental health concerns. Your recent behavior has been erratic. Fleeing California without notice. Hiding in hotels under assumed names. Making paranoid accusations against your family. Exhibiting signs of a delusional break with reality." "That's insane." "Perhaps." I could hear the smile in his voice. "But that's rather the point, isn't it? I've never even met a psychiatrist. 2 licensed professionals have reviewed your case, your public statements, your flight patterns, your communications with family members. They've both signed affidavits expressing concern for your mental well-being. They can't do that without examining me. He's called in every favor he has. It's an emergency ex parte hearing. Usually these take weeks, but he found a judge willing to fast-track it on the grounds of imminent self-harm. It's not legal procedure, Elise. It's an ambush. The hearing is tomorrow morning at 9. If the judge grants the motion, Mr. Carter will be appointed temporary conservator of your estate until a full psychiatric evaluation can be conducted. Tomorrow morning." He had moved faster than I thought possible. "You can fight this, of course," Hendricks continued. "These proceedings can take years to resolve, years of depositions, years of hearings, years of psychiatric evaluations and appeals and motions, years during which your assets would be managed by someone other than yourself. Years. While Richard controlled my $1 billion. While he used my own money to fund the legal battle against me. While he slowly dismantled everything I had built. I'll see you in court, Miss Carter." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, at the blank screen that had just delivered my death sentence. "Elise?" Daniel's voice seemed far away. "What happened? What did he say?" "He's filed for conservatorship. Tomorrow. He's going to try to have me declared incompetent." I didn't wait for Daniel's response. I was already moving, already grabbing my keys. "Where are you going?" "To see my mother. I need to know. I need to know if she knew." "Elise, wait. Let me come with you. No. I turned to face him. This, I have to do alone. The drive to my mother's house took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. 20 minutes of rehearsing what I would say, what I would ask. Did you know? That was the only question that mattered. She answered the door before I could knock. She must have been watching for me. Her face was gray, hollow. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Elise, I heard about the petition. From Richard. From his lawyer. He called to warn me, to tell me what I should say if anyone asks. And what did you tell him? She stepped aside. Let me in. The house was dark, the curtains drawn. I told him I would think about it. We sat in the living room, the same room where Richard had dismissed me 1,000 times, the same room where I had learned to make myself small, invisible, safe, the same room where I had celebrated birthdays he ignored and holidays he ruined and achievements he belittled. The furniture hadn't changed. The same couch, the same chairs, the same smell of furniture polish and old money and quiet desperation. I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to tell me the truth. For once in your life, for once in 26 years, I need the truth. She nodded. Her hands were shaking so badly she clasped them together to keep them still. Did you know about my father, about how he really died? She closed her eyes. I watched the tears slip down her cheeks, watched her crumble in slow motion, watched the last walls come down. I suspected, she whispered. After a few years, I started to suspect. Tell me. Little things at first, the way Richard searched the house, those first few months, going through David's old files, his books, his desk, asking questions about whether David ever brought work home, whether he ever mentioned problems at the company. When did you know for sure? I don't know if I ever knew for sure. I just felt it. In my bones. In the way he looked at your father's photograph. In the way he reacted when anyone mentioned David's name. There was something hungry about it. Something that didn't make sense unless he had something to hide. Yes. She opened her eyes. They were red, swollen, ancient. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself it was just my guilt, for moving on so fast, for choosing safety over grief. But the feeling never went away. And you stayed. I was afraid. Her voice broke like glass. You don't understand what he's like, Elise, what he's capable of. The way he looks at you when he's angry, like you're not even human, like you're just an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved. I know exactly what he's like. I lived with him for 22 years. I know the look you're talking about. I've seen it 1,000 times. Then you know why I stayed, why I kept quiet. I thought if I was good enough, if I made him happy, if I kept the peace and didn't cause problems, he would leave us alone, leave you alone. I thought I was protecting you. But he didn't leave me alone. No. She looked at me then, really looked at me, the way she should have looked at me when I was 6 years old and scared and confused about why Daddy wasn't coming home. No, he didn't. He spent 22 years making you feel like nothing. And I watched it happen, and I said nothing, because I was too afraid to speak. Will you testify against him? The question hung in the air between us, the only question that mattered now, the only thing that could make any of this right. She was quiet for a long time, so long that the answer became clear before she spoke the words. I can't. Can't or won't. Both. Her voice was barely audible, a whisper from a woman who had spent her whole life whispering. He'll destroy me. He'll destroy everything. And it won't matter anyway. It's my word against his. He has lawyers, money, power, connections. I have nothing but 26 years of complicity and silence. You have the truth. The truth doesn't matter. Not in Richard's world. Not when he has the power to make his own truth. To pay doctors to say whatever he wants. To pay lawyers to twist reality. To make anyone who crosses him disappear. Is that what you think he'll do? Make you disappear? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I stood up. I couldn't sit there anymore. couldn't look at her face, at the weakness and fear and failure that had defined my entire childhood. Then I'll do it myself. Elise, please. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. You don't know what you're dealing with. He'll destroy you. He'll take everything you've built. And if that doesn't work, he'll find another way. He always finds another way. Is that a warning or a threat? It's the truth. The only truth I have left to give you. The only gift I can offer after failing you for so long. I walked out of her house without looking back, without saying goodbye, without giving her the closure she didn't deserve. The drive back to the hotel was a blur. I don't remember the roads, the lights, the other cars. I just remember the emptiness, the vast, aching emptiness of being completely, utterly alone. My mother wouldn't help me, the woman who gave birth to me, the woman who was supposed to protect me from the monsters in the dark. She had chosen Richard, again. After everything. After learning that he murdered my father, she had chosen him. She had always chosen him. Daniel was on the phone when I walked in. His face was pale, drawn. Something had happened while I was gone. Something bad. What? He hung up, looked at me with eyes full of something I had never seen before. Fear. Real fear. Someone broke into my apartment in San Francisco. What? While I've been here, with you, someone broke in, took my laptop, my files, everything I had on Richard, all the research I did before you even knew I was looking. The room seemed to spin. I reached for the wall to steady myself. A robbery. They didn't touch anything else. The TV, the cash in the drawer, the watch my father gave me. Just the files. Just the research on Richard and his company. A message. A warning. We know where you live. We know what you're doing. We can reach you anytime we want. Because of me, I said. The words tasted like ash, like defeat. They came after you because of me. Elise, that's not... It is. It's exactly what this is. Richard is sending a message. Anyone who helps me, anyone who stands by my side, he'll destroy them too. One by one, until I'm completely alone. Daniel crossed the room, took my hands in his. I don't care. I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever. You should. You should walk away right now, before it gets worse, before he does something that can't be undone. I'm not going anywhere. But I saw it in his eyes. Just for a moment, just for a flicker, I saw the first shadow of doubt, the first crack in his certainty, and I couldn't blame him. I couldn't blame anyone for wanting to run from this. Richard Carter had destroyed everyone who ever stood in his way. My father, the other partners, probably dozens of people I would never know about. What made me think I could be different? What made me think I could win? Later. After Daniel had gone to make calls, after the lawyers had been notified, after the police report had been filed and the insurance company contacted and all the practical matters attended to, I sat alone in the hotel room, truly alone for the first time since this started. The silence was overwhelming, the kind of silence that presses in on you from all sides, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat, your own breathing, your own thoughts screaming at you that everything is falling apart. On the table in front of me was the photograph I had brought from San Francisco, the one in the silver frame, my father and me, his arm around my small shoulders, both of us smiling at something just out of frame. His little star. That's what he called me. I picked it up, looked at his face, at the man I barely remembered, the man who had tried to do the right thing and paid with his life, the man who had left me a letter and a trust fund and a legacy of courage that I wasn't sure I could live up to. I'm sorry, I whispered to the photograph. I tried. I really tried. The evidence might not be enough. Copies not originals. 26 years of chain of custody issues, cold trails and dead witnesses, and a legal system that favored those with power and money. My mother wouldn't testify. Too scared, too broken, too complicit. The woman who should have protected me couldn't even protect herself. Daniel was a target now. His apartment violated, his research stolen. Anyone who helped me would become a target. Anyone who stood by my side would be destroyed. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, Richard would stand in a courtroom and try to have me declared insane. Try to steal everything I had built. Try to finish what he started 26 years ago when he cut my father's brake lines. Maybe it was time to stop fighting. Maybe it was time to accept that some battles can't be won. That some enemies are too powerful. That some truths are better left buried. Maybe it was time to take my money, whatever I could salvage, and disappear. Some island somewhere. A new name. A new life. Let Richard win. Let my father's murder go unavenged. Let the lies continue for another 26 years. At least then, the people I loved would be safe. Daniel would be safe. Maybe even my mother, for whatever that was worth. My father would understand. Wouldn't he? He didn't die so that I could throw my life away fighting his battles. He died trying to protect the future. My future. Maybe the best way to honor him was to live. I picked up my phone, started to dial James, to tell him it was over, that I couldn't do this anymore, that the cost was too high, that I was going to take my $1 billion and run. My finger hovered over the call button, and then a text message from a number I didn't recognize. Check your father's laptop, the one from Stanford. There's something you missed. I stared at the words, read them again, and again, and again. Check the old family computer, the one you took to Stanford, the one you never threw away. My father's laptop. Not really mine. It was the heavy, obsolete machine I had dragged to California not to use, but because I couldn't bear to leave it behind. It was the only thing of his I had left. I hadn't powered it up in 14 years. I wasn't even sure it would boot. I had brought it with me when I left New Jersey at 18. Everything I owned fit in 2 suitcases and a backpack. The laptop was in the backpack. I still had it, somewhere. In a box in my San Francisco office, probably. A relic from another life. Another version of myself. Someone knew something. Someone was pointing me somewhere. But who? And how did they know about a laptop I had barely thought about in years? I didn't have answers. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have any reason to believe that an old laptop could change anything. But I had something else. Something I thought I had lost. I had a reason to keep fighting. I set down my phone, stood up, looked at my father's photograph one more time. Not yet, I said to his face. I'm not giving up yet. I wasn't ready to surrender. Not until I knew what was on that laptop. Not until I found out who was helping me. And not until Richard Carter paid for what he had done. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. I stared at the text message until the words burned into my retinas. Check your father's laptop, the one from Stanford. There's something you missed. My father's laptop. Except it wasn't really his laptop. It was mine. The old clunky thing I had dragged to Stanford when I was 18 years old, desperate to escape New Jersey and everything it represented. The laptop was in San Francisco, 3,000 miles away, in a storage box in my office buried under years of forgotten cables and old hard drives and obsolete gadgets. I kept telling myself I would throw away someday. I hadn't thought about it in years, hadn't opened it in even longer. But someone knew it existed. Someone knew it mattered. Someone was pointing me toward something I had been carrying with me for 14 years without knowing. The hearing was in 9 hours. 9 hours to prove I wasn't crazy. 9 hours to stop Richard from stealing everything I had built. 9 hours to save my own life. I couldn't fly back to San Francisco and make it in time. Even a private jet would cut it too close. And I wasn't leaving New Jersey. Not now. Not when everything was about to come to a head. But I knew someone who could help. I picked up my phone and called Maya. She answered on the second ring. Middle of the night. Didn't ask why I was calling. Didn't complain about the hour. That was Maya. Always had been. Elise, what's wrong? I need you to do something. Something crazy. How crazy are we talking? Get on a plane tonight. Bring my old laptop. The one in the storage box in my office closet. The ancient one that barely runs. The one I brought from New Jersey when I was 18. Silence on the line. I could hear her thinking, processing. deciding whether her best friend had finally lost her mind. The one you brought from college. Before college. It was our family computer. I took it when I left. Why do you need it now? I don't know yet, but someone sent me a message. Someone who knows something. And they pointed me to that laptop. It might be nothing. It might be everything. But I have to know. More silence. Longer this time. Then, Red Eye leaves in 2 hours. I can be there by 6 a.m. your time. No questions, no hesitation, no demand for explanations I couldn't give. Just yes. Just I'm coming. That's what real family looked like. Not blood, not obligation, not the accident of being born into the same house. Just showing up. Every time. Without being asked twice. Without keeping score. Maya. Save it. You can thank me when we nail this bastard to the wall. She hung up. I set down my phone and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Daniel was watching me from the couch. He looked exhausted. We both did. She's coming. Red Eye, she'll be here by morning. Then we should try to sleep. But neither of us moved. Sleep felt impossible. Too much adrenaline, too much fear, too much hope. Instead, I sat in the chair by the window and stared at my phone, at the text message from the unknown number. Who sends an anonymous message to help someone destroy their own family? I tried calling the number back. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then voicemail. A generic automated voice, no clues. I searched the number online, nothing, unlisted, untraceable. Someone knew about the laptop, someone who understood my history, someone close enough to know details that weren't public knowledge. Family. It had to be family, not Diane. She was too scared to help openly, let alone anonymously. Not Richard, obviously. That left one person who might have a reason to turn against her father. Brooke. But that didn't make sense. Brooke hated me, blamed me for ruining her wedding. She had spent her entire life as Richard's perfect daughter, his golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Why would she help me destroy him? Unless she had finally seen what he really was. Unless the scales had fallen from her eyes the way they had from mine. I didn't sleep. I watched the hours tick by on my phone. 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. At 5:15, a text from Maya, landed getting car now, be there soon. I stood up, started pacing. Daniel woke at some point, made coffee that I couldn't drink, sat with me in silence. At 6:12, a knock on the door. I opened it, and Maya was there. She looked like she'd been through hell. Rumpled clothes, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd clearly thrown on whatever was closest and run to the airport. But she was here. She'd come. In her hand was a laptop bag, faded, old, the one I'd carried through 4 years of Stanford and then forgotten in a closet. You look terrible, she said. You flew across the country in the middle of the night. That's what co-founders are for. She stepped inside, looked around the modest hotel room, then back at me. Also, what the hell is going on? I've been on a plane for 5 hours with no Wi-Fi, and I have approximately 10,000 questions. So I told her. Everything. James Holloway. The murder. Richard's role in the Ponzi scheme. The conservatorship petition. All of it. Maya listened without interrupting. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock to fury. He killed your father, she said when I finished. And he's been living in your house for 22 years, pretending to be your family. Yes. And now he's trying to have you committed so he can steal your money. Yes. Okay. She set the laptop bag on the table. Let's find out what's on this thing, and then let's destroy him. The laptop was ancient. It took 3 minutes just to boot up. The screen flickered, the fan wheezed, but eventually the desktop appeared. I navigated through the file system. College papers I barely remembered writing. Code projects from my first programming classes. Photos from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. And then, a folder I didn't recognize. It was buried in a subdirectory, hidden among system files. I would never have found it if I wasn't looking. The folder name made my heart stop. DM, for E. Do not delete. DM, David Mitchell. For E. For Elise. My father had left me something. On this laptop. Before he died. How is that possible? Daniel asked. You took this laptop to college. He died when you were 6. This was the family computer, I said slowly. The memories were coming back. Fuzzy. Distant. Before it was mine. We all used it. Mom, Dad, me for games and learning programs. So he put files on the family computer. And when I took it to Stanford, I took his files with me. I stared at the folder. 14 years. They've been here for 14 years, and I never knew. My hands were shaking as I clicked to open the folder. Inside were dozens of files, documents, spreadsheets, PDFs, and audio files. Lots of audio files, more than I could count at first glance. The documents were dated March 1999, 6 months before he died. 6 months before a rainy night and failed brakes and a tree that ended everything. He must have known. Even then, he must have known they were coming for him. I opened the first PDF. It was a scan of a letter, on company letterhead, with original signatures, real ink preserved in digital form, the Ponzi scheme evidence, the proof of fraud. The documents James had given me were copies, second-generation reproductions that could be challenged in court. These were the originals, the source material, the smoking gun that had been hiding in plain sight for 26 years. David had scanned everything, every piece of evidence, every damning document, and he'd hidden them on the family computer, in a folder his 6-year-old daughter would never think to open. A folder labeled with his initials. A message in a bottle waiting for the tide to bring it home. Hiding in plain sight. For 26 years. Waiting for me. Oh my God, Maya whispered. Her voice was barely audible. This is everything, Elise. This is everything. I opened one of the audio files. My father's voice filled the room. I hadn't heard it in 26 years. Not since I was 6 years old, standing in a hospital hallway while adults whispered words I didn't understand. But I knew it instantly. Would have known it anywhere. In a crowd of thousands. In the noise of a storm. I would have known my father's voice. This is David Mitchell. The date is March 15th, 1999. I'm recording this because I believe my life is in danger. I started to cry. I couldn't help it. Couldn't stop it even if I wanted to. The sound of his voice. It was like being wrapped in a blanket I'd forgotten existed. Like coming home after decades of wandering in the dark. Like being 6 years old again. Safe and loved and certain that nothing bad could ever happen. Daniel put his arm around me. Maya squeezed my hand. But I kept listening. I had to hear it all. Every word my father left behind, every syllable of truth he preserved for me. I have discovered evidence of a massive fraud at my firm, a Ponzi scheme involving billions of dollars. The partners responsible are aware that I've been investigating. I believe they're planning to silence me. The audio continued. Names, dates, account numbers, a roadmap of corruption laid out in my father's calm, methodical voice. And then, another recording. This one from a different date. April 1999. Voices in conversation. Muffled. Recorded secretly. We need to make sure Mitchell doesn't talk. A younger voice, but I recognized it. Even 26 years later, I recognized it. Richard. What are you suggesting? Another voice. One of the other partners. Whatever it takes. I'm not losing everything because some auditor can't mind his own business. Whatever it takes. That was Richard. My stepfather. The man who raised me. The man who married my mother and adopted me and spent 22 years making me feel worthless, discussing my father's murder, months before it happened. We've got him, Maya said. Her voice was fierce. Elise, this is everything. Original documents, audio recordings, his own voice discussing the crime. 26 years, I whispered. This has been sitting on this laptop for 26 years, waiting for me to find it. My phone rang. Unknown number. The same one as the text. My heart stopped for a moment, then started again, faster than before. I answered. Did you find it? A woman's voice, familiar, but stripped of the confidence I was used to hearing. Brooke, Silence. Long silence. The kind that stretches between people who have never really talked, even though they've known each other their whole lives. Then, I found Richard's journals. In his safe. He kept detailed notes about everything he couldn't find in 1999. He wrote about a missing drive on the family computer. He was obsessed with it. When I saw you still had that old junk laptop in your office photos, I put it together. I knew whatever he was afraid of, it was on that machine. I didn't understand what they were. Just old documents, numbers, audio files I didn't bother to listen to. She paused, her voice caught. Until now. Until the Forbes article. Until I started asking questions about why Dad was so terrified of you. He killed my father, Brooke. I know. Her voice broke, shattered like glass. I've spent the last 3 days going through those files, listening to those recordings, finally understanding what he really is. And now I can't pretend anymore. He's a murderer. He destroyed your life. He's trying to destroy you now. She took a breath. I won't let him. Not anymore. Why he's your father? Because he's a monster, and I've spent my whole life pretending he wasn't. Because it was easier. Because I was the favorite. Because looking the other way meant I got to keep being the golden child, while you got nothing. Brooke, you're my sister Elise. My actual sister. We share a mother. We grew up in the same house, and I let him treat you like garbage for 22 years, because it meant he treated me like a princess. I didn't know what to say. 22 years of resentment, 22 years of feeling like the outsider, the mistake, the burden, and now, this. The hearing is in less than 2 hours, I said finally. Can you be there? I'm already in the parking lot. I've been here since 5 a.m., trying to work up the courage to call you. She had come, without being asked, without knowing if I would even accept her help. Just like Maya, just like Daniel, just like James. Maybe I had more family than I ever knew. Harrison Webb was on a conference call within minutes. The evidence, the recordings, the testimony we could provide. He was drafting an emergency countermotion before we even hung up. This changes everything, he said. Original documents, audio evidence, a witness from inside the family willing to testify. We're not just going to defeat this petition. We're going to destroy him. The hearing was in 90 minutes. I took a shower, put on the armor of a woman going to war, a black suit, simple jewelry, hair pulled back tight. When I came out, Maya had the laptop packed and ready. Daniel had the car running, everything we needed. But there was one more thing I wanted. I opened the laptop one more time, navigated to a folder I hadn't looked at in months. Wedding things. The maid of honor speech. The one I never got to give. The one I'd written before I knew what Richard really was. I opened it, read the words. To my sister Brooke. We didn't have the same father, but we shared the same roof, the same mother, the same complicated, messy, beautiful thing called family. I had written those words believing they were true. Believing that family was something you were born into, something you couldn't escape or change. I knew better now. Family was a choice. Family was the people who showed up, who flew across the country in the middle of the night, who turned against their own father to do what was right. I saved the speech to my phone. I might need it later. Ready? Daniel asked. I looked at Maya, at Daniel, at my phone where Brooke's last text waited. Back entrance. I'll meet you there. My allies, my family, the one I had chosen, the one that had chosen me back. Let's go, I said. Let's finish what my father started. The courthouse loomed ahead. Gray stone, cold columns, the kind of building where lives were decided and futures were destroyed. The kind of building where families tore each other apart in public and pretended it was civilization. Richard's car was already in the parking lot. Black Mercedes, tinted windows, the same car he had been driving for years. The car of a man who thought money could buy him out of any problem. He was inside, probably with his lawyers, probably confident that he had already won, probably thinking that his scared, unstable stepdaughter would crumble under the weight of his legal assault. He didn't know what was coming. He didn't know that I had his voice on tape, his confession, his condemnation. The words he spoke 26 years ago preserved in digital amber, waiting for this moment. He didn't know that his own daughter was about to testify against him, that the golden child had chosen a different side, that the family he had built on lies was about to tear itself apart. He didn't know that David Mitchell had outsmarted him from beyond the grave, that my father, my real father, had seen this moment coming and had prepared for it, had trusted me to find the truth when I was ready. I touched the laptop bag beside me. 26 years of secrets. My father's last gift, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment when I would finally be ready to use it. That moment was now. I opened the car door and stepped into the cold December morning. The air was sharp, clean, the kind of cold that wakes you up and reminds you that you're alive, that after everything, after the abuse, the rejection, the manipulation, the attempted theft of everything I had built, I was still standing. I was alive. My father was not, because of Richard Carter. But today his secrets were going to die. Today his lies were going to crumble. Today his empire was going to fall, and I was going to be the one to push it over. Brooke was waiting by the back entrance just like she promised. She looked nervous, pale, but determined. "Ready?" she asked. I looked at her. My half-sister. The girl who had everything while I had nothing. The favorite daughter of the man who destroyed my life. And now, my ally, my witness, my family. "Ready," I said. Maya flanked my left side, Daniel my right. Harrison Webb was already inside filing our counter motion. James Holloway was on his way with his own testimony. An army, a family, built not from blood, but from choice. We walked toward the courthouse together. "Let's end this," I said. And we did. The courthouse smelled like old paper and older justice. I walked through the metal detectors at 8:45 in the morning, flanked by Daniel on my left and Maya on my right. My armor for the day was simple. A black suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back tight. The outfit of a woman who had nothing to hide. The outfit of a woman who had come to tell the truth. I looked like what I was. A woman going to war. The lobby was already busy. Lawyers in expensive suits. Families looking lost. The ordinary chaos of a building where lives were decided every day. Brooke was waiting just inside the doors. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Maybe longer. Her wedding makeup was long gone, replaced by the raw, exhausted face of someone who had finally stopped pretending, who had finally looked at her life and seen it for what it really was. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. Maybe we never would be. 22 years of silence couldn't be erased in a few days. But she nodded at me, and I nodded back. That was enough. For now. It was more than we'd had in decades. James Holloway arrived moments later. Calm, composed, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The same steady presence he had been for 26 years, watching from the shadows, waiting for this exact moment. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I've been ready for 26 years. I just didn't know it." He almost smiled. "Your father would be proud. He always knew you were stronger than you looked." The words hit me harder than I expected. My father. Speaking about me. Believing in me. Even when I was 6 years old and too young to understand what was happening. Harrison Webb met us outside the courtroom doors. He was carrying a laptop bag. My laptop bag. With the care of someone handling explosives. Which, in a way, he was. "Judge Morrison," he said, keeping his voice low. "She's fair, by the book. If we present the evidence correctly, she'll listen. She's not the type to be swayed by theatrics or connections. And if Richard's lawyers object, they will, constantly. That's their job. But the evidence speaks for itself." He paused, looked at me directly. "Are you sure you want to do this? Once we play those recordings in open court, there's no going back. No settling quietly. No private resolution. The whole world will know." I thought about my father. About 26 years of lies. About the man who killed him sleeping under the same roof, eating dinner at the same table, telling me I was worthless while he hid the worst secret imaginable. "Play them," I said. "Play all of it. I want the world to hear." The courtroom doors opened at 8:55. Richard was already inside. He sat at the respondent's table with Robert Hendricks looking exactly like what he wanted people to see. A concerned father, a respectable businessman, a man worried about his mentally unstable stepdaughter. The mask was perfect. 26 years of practice had made it so. But then he saw me, and then he saw Brooke, standing next to me, on my side. The mask slipped, just for a second, just long enough for me to see what was underneath. Fear, real fear, the fear of a man who realized his perfect facade was about to crumble. Good. "All rise," Judge Morrison entered. Gray hair, sharp eyes, the kind of face that had seen every lie humanity could offer and was no longer impressed by any of them. "Be seated. We're here on an emergency petition for conservatorship filed by Richard Carter regarding Elise Carter Mitchell. Mr. Hendricks, you may proceed." Hendricks stood, straightened his tie, began the performance. "Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned about his stepdaughter's mental state. In recent days, she has exhibited erratic and alarming behavior, fleeing California without notice, hiding in hotels, making paranoid accusations against family members, and displaying signs of a delusional break with reality." He presented the psychiatrist's reports. 2 doctors who had never met me, never examined me, making judgments about my mental health based on what Richard told them. "Based on this evidence, we respectfully request that Mr. Carter be appointed temporary conservator of Miss Mitchell's estate until a full psychiatric evaluation can be conducted." Judge Morrison made notes, looked at Harrison. "Counsel for the respondent." Harrison rose. His voice was steady, certain. "Your Honor, we object to the psychiatric reports on the grounds that neither doctor has ever met or examined my client. Their assessments are based entirely on secondhand information provided by the petitioner." Noted. "Furthermore," Harrison paused, "let the silence build. We don't just have counter-evidence to this petition. We have proof that this entire proceeding is part of a 26-year cover-up of fraud and murder." The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter's fingers stopped. Hendricks was on his feet immediately. "Objection! This is inflammatory and completely irrelevant to the matter at hand." "Your Honor," Harrison continued, "the petitioner is using this court to silence a witness. My client possesses evidence that Richard Carter was involved in a massive financial fraud in 1999, and that he arranged the murder of her biological father, David Mitchell, to prevent exposure of that fraud." "That's outrageous," Hendricks shouted. "Your Honor, this is clearly the delusional thinking the petition warns about." Judge Morrison raised her hand. Silence fell. "Mr. Webb, those are serious accusations." "Yes, Your Honor, and we have evidence to support every one of them." She studied him for a long moment. Then, "Present your evidence." Hendricks objected again, and again, and again. Each time Judge Morrison overruled. Harrison began with the documents. The scanned originals from my laptop, letters on company letterhead, financial records showing the movement of funds, signatures that could be verified. These documents were hidden by David Mitchell on a family computer in March of 1999, 6 months before his death. They detail a Ponzi scheme involving hundreds of millions of dollars, operated by 3 partners at his firm. One of those partners, Harrison pointed at Richard, was the petitioner. "Lies," Richard said. His voice was tight, controlled, but his hands, I could see them on the table. They were shaking. "Fabrications by a mentally ill woman." "Mr. Carter," Judge Morrison's voice was sharp, "you'll have your chance to respond. For now, be silent." Harrison continued. The evidence mounted, document after document, a paper trail of fraud stretching back decades, and then the audio. "Your Honor, we have one more piece of evidence, a recording made by David Mitchell shortly before his death." The laptop was connected to the courtroom speakers. The room went perfectly still. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Harrison pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. I hadn't heard it in 26 years. Not since I was 6 years old, sitting on his lap while he read me bedtime stories. Not since he called me his little star and promised that everything would be okay. This is David Mitchell. The date is March 15th, 1999. I'm recording this because I believe my life is in danger. I closed my eyes. Let his voice wash over me. The voice I had forgotten. The voice I had been denied for 26 years. The voice of the man who loved me, who saw something in me worth protecting. Tears streamed down my face. I didn't try to stop them. I have discovered evidence of a massive fraud at my firm. The partners responsible are aware of my investigation. I believe they are planning to silence me. He went on. Names, dates, account numbers, everything he had discovered, everything he had documented, everything he had died for. His voice was calm, methodical, the voice of a man who knew he might not survive, but wanted the truth to live on. When it ended, the courtroom was silent. I could hear people breathing, could hear my own heartbeat, loud and fast and alive. Then Harrison played the second recording. This was recorded in April of 1999, 2 months before David Mitchell's death, 2 months before a car accident that was no accident. Voices, muffled but clear. 2 men talking. We need to make sure Mitchell doesn't talk. I knew that voice, even 26 years younger. Even through the static. I knew it. Richard. Whatever it takes. I'm not losing everything because some auditor can't mind his own business. Whatever it takes. Richard's voice, my stepfather's voice, the voice that had told me I was worthless for 22 years, the voice of a murderer. That's not me. Richard was on his feet, face red, veins bulging. That recording is fabricated. She's trying to destroy me. Mr. Carter, sit down. Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen fire. I will not sit down while I'm being slandered in my own bailiff. 2 uniformed officers moved toward Richard. He stopped, looked around the courtroom, at the faces staring back at him, at the horror and disgust in their eyes. He sat down. But the damage was done. Everyone had heard. Everyone knew. Judge Morrison called a 15-minute recess. I stepped into the hallway. My legs were shaking. Daniel held my hand. You okay? I don't know. I didn't know. I had just heard my father's voice for the first time in 26 years, and I had just heard my stepfather confess to his murder. I didn't know what I was. When court reconvened, it was time for witness testimony. James Holloway took the stand first. He told the story from the beginning. His friendship with David. The night David showed him the evidence. The promise he made. 26 years of watching and waiting and protecting. I identified Richard Carter as the junior partner who arranged David's death, James said. His voice never wavered. I have spent 26 years gathering evidence and waiting for the right moment. That moment is now. Hendricks tried to discredit him. Old grudges. Financial motives. Anything he could think of. James was unshakable. Then it was Brooke's turn. She walked to the witness stand like she was walking to her own execution, pale, trembling, but moving forward. She didn't look at Richard. Couldn't. State your name for the record. Brooke Elizabeth Carter. And your relationship to the petitioner. She swallowed. He's my father. Miss Carter, please tell the court what you know about the evidence presented today. Brooke took a breath, let it out slowly. I found those files years ago, on Elise's laptop. I borrowed it in college. My computer crashed before finals. I saw the folder, opened some files by accident. I didn't understand what they were. When did you come to understand? After the Forbes article, the one about Elise's company. She paused. Her voice caught. I started asking questions about why my father was so afraid of her, about why he had spent 22 years treating her like she was nothing. And what did you discover? Brooke finally looked at Richard. I saw something pass between them, something final. I discovered that my father is a murderer, that he killed Elise's father to protect himself, that he married her mother to search for evidence, that he spent 2 decades trying to break her, to make sure she never asked the questions I finally asked. You're lying, Richard screamed. After everything I gave you, everything I sacrificed for you. Mr. Carter. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like a gunshot. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Richard was restrained by his own lawyer, but his eyes, those cold, empty eyes, they were fixed on Brooke, on his daughter. The betrayal in them was absolute. Brooke kept talking, her voice steadier now, like the worst was over. There's something else, she said. Something I did. Go on. The Forbes article, the one that was published on Elise's sister's wedding day. Brooke looked at me. I leaked it. The courtroom murmured. I stared at her. I timed it for the wedding. I needed Elise to come back, to face him, to find what I had seen but couldn't bring myself to show her. Tears were streaming down her face. I've known for years that something was wrong, that my father was hiding something terrible. But I was too scared to look, too comfortable being the favorite, so I forced the confrontation. I made it impossible for anyone to look away. You leaked the NDA, I whispered. I didn't mean to speak. The words just came out. Brooke nodded. I'm sorry. I should have just told you. But I was a coward. I thought if I created enough chaos, the truth would come out on its own. She wiped her face. I was right. It just took longer than I thought. My sister. My half-sister. The golden child. She had been trying to help me, in her own broken, terrified way, for months. Judge Morrison waited until the courtroom settled. Then she spoke. Based on the evidence and testimony presented today, I am denying the petition for emergency conservatorship. Miss Mitchell is clearly competent and in possession of significant evidence of criminal activity. She turned to Richard. Mr. Carter, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for immediate investigation. The evidence suggests potential charges of fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and... She paused. And murder. The word hung in the air. Murder. Spoken in a courtroom. About my stepfather. I strongly suggest you consult with criminal defense counsel immediately. Judge Morrison gathered her papers. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. It was over. After 26 years, it was finally over. People filed out of the courtroom. Reporters were gathering in the hallway. Cameras, microphones, the smell of blood in the water. I stepped through the doors. Daniel and Maya beside me, Brooke behind. And then Richard broke free. He pushed past Hendricks, shoved through the crowd, moving toward me with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for a man his age. You ruined everything. His voice was a scream. Everything! Security moved to intercept, but Richard was faster. He grabbed my arm, pulled me close, his face inches from mine, his breath hot and sour. You think you've won. His voice was a hiss now, low, dangerous. You think this is over? Daniel tried to pull him off. Richard shoved him away with surprising strength. Your father thought he could destroy me too. Richard's grip tightened, bruising. Look what happened to him. A confession, in front of everyone. Is that a threat? I asked. My voice didn't shake. I was surprised by that. It's a promise. Security finally reached us, hands pulling Richard away, his lawyer shouting about rights and due process. Cameras flashing, chaos everywhere. But Richard's eyes, those dead empty eyes, never left my face. This isn't over, he said as they dragged him away. It will never be over. Not until you're in the ground with your father. Then he was gone, swallowed by uniforms and procedures and the machinery of justice that he had evaded for 26 years. But I could still feel his grip on my arm, could still smell his breath, could still hear his voice in my ear, promising to finish what he had started. It will never be over. The words echoed in the marble hallway, in my bones, in the part of me that had spent 22 years learning to be afraid of him. Daniel was at my side instantly. Are you okay, Elise? Are you okay? I looked at him, at the fear in his eyes, the love, the desperate need to fix something that couldn't be fixed with good intentions and kind words. I wasn't okay. I had won. I had exposed Richard Carter in front of a courtroom full of witnesses. I had destroyed his empire and his reputation and his freedom. The district attorney would investigate. The police would dig into cold cases. The truth would finally come out. But he had looked at me with those eyes, those dead, empty eyes, and promised to kill me, just like he had killed my father. Men like Richard Carter didn't stop. Not when they were cornered, not when they were desperate. They got more dangerous, more unpredictable. Prison walls wouldn't contain his hatred. Distance wouldn't diminish his reach. Unless I made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. Ever again. Elise. Daniel's voice broke through the fog. What do you want to do? I looked around. At the reporters pushing closer, their cameras hungry for blood. At the microphones being thrust toward my face. At Maya standing guard like a warrior. At Brooke, my sister, looking more lost than I had ever seen her. At my family, the real one. The one I had built from scratch. The one that had chosen me back. I thought about my father. About the truth he had hidden from me to find. About the voice on those recordings, calm and steady, even in the face of death. He had trusted me with everything. His legacy, his evidence, his final hope for justice. I wasn't going to let him down. I want to make a statement, I said. My voice was stronger than I expected, clearer. To everyone, right now, the whole world needs to hear this. Maya stepped forward. Are you sure you don't have to do this today? You could wait, process, think about what you want to say. I've had 26 years to think about it. I straightened my jacket, lifted my chin, became the woman my father always believed I could be. It's time to tell the whole truth. The reporters surged closer. Cameras flashed. Microphones appeared like weapons pointed at my face. I took a breath, and I began to speak. Not for revenge, not for victory, for my father, for the truth, for everyone who had ever been silenced by men like Richard Carter. It was finally time to be heard. The microphones looked like weapons pointed at my face. A dozen of them, maybe more. Clustered on a makeshift podium that someone had set up on the courthouse steps while we were inside watching Richard Carter's world crumble. Behind them, a sea of cameras and reporters and faces hungry for the story of the century. The December wind was bitter, cold enough to make my eyes water, cold enough to remind me that this was real, that I was actually standing here about to do what I had never imagined I would have the courage to do. I had spent 22 years being invisible, being small, being the girl who didn't matter, the stepdaughter no one wanted. The burden that Richard Carter reminded me I was every single day. Now the whole world was watching. Daniel stood at my left shoulder, steady as always, Maya at my right, fierce and protective. Brooke somewhere behind me, still shell-shocked from testifying against her own father, but refusing to leave. James Holloway a few steps back, the man who had spent 26 years waiting for this exact moment. My family, the real one, arranged like an army at my back, ready to catch me if I fell, ready to fight anyone who tried to stop me. Harrison Webb gave me a small nod from the edge of the crowd. Ready when you are. I stepped up to the microphones. The crowd surged forward like a wave. Questions flew at me from every direction. A chaos of voices all demanding answers I was finally ready to give. Miss Mitchell, is it true that... Can you confirm the allegations of... What evidence do you have that... I raised my hand. Just like that, the noise died instantly, completely. Everyone waiting, everyone listening. For the first time in my life, everyone was listening to me. 26 years ago, I said, my father was murdered. The silence became absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. His name was David Mitchell. He was an auditor at a financial firm in New Jersey. He discovered evidence of a massive fraud, a Ponzi scheme involving hundreds of millions of dollars. And when he tried to expose it, they killed him. I paused. Let the words sink in. Let the cameras capture every emotion on my face. His brakes were cut. His car crashed on a rainy night. It was ruled an accident. The investigation was corrupted. The case was closed. And the men responsible went on with their lives. My voice was steady. I was surprised by that. I had expected to shake, to cry, to fall apart. Instead, I felt stronger than I had ever felt in my life. 4 years after my father's death, one of those men married my mother. He adopted me. He gave me his name, and he spent the next 22 years trying to break me, to make sure I never asked the questions that would lead me to the truth. I looked directly into the cameras, into the eyes of everyone watching. That man is Richard Carter, and today he will finally face justice. The crowd exploded, questions shouting over questions, cameras flashing like lightning. I didn't flinch, didn't step back. I have evidence, documents, recordings, testimony from witnesses who have waited 26 years for this moment. The district attorney has been briefed. A formal investigation has been opened. I took a breath. This was the part that mattered most. I am not crazy. I am not mentally unstable. I am not the delusional woman Richard Carter tried to paint me as. I am the daughter of David Mitchell. And I will not be silenced. Not anymore. Not ever again. I stepped back from the microphones. Harrison moved forward to handle the follow-up questions. The legal details. The procedural stuff. My part was done. I had told the truth. Finally, after 26 years. And the whole world had heard it. The next hours were chaos. Police escorts, back entrances, news vans following us like predators tracking prey. My face was everywhere, on every screen, every phone, every newsstand. The story of the billionaire tech CEO whose stepfather murdered her biological father. It was too dramatic not to go viral, too perfect for the headlines. But I didn't care about the headlines. I cared about what came next. Harrison found us in a private room at the courthouse away from the cameras and the crowds. "Richard has been formally arrested," he said. "No bail. The judge agreed he was a flight risk. The DA is moving fast. Cold case unit is already pulling files." "Will there be a trial?" "Almost certainly. The evidence you provided, the recordings especially, they're devastating. He could try to plead out, but given the public nature of this..." Harrison shook his head. "He's going to prison. The only question is for how long." Prison. Richard Carter. The man who had made me feel worthless for 22 years. In prison. It didn't feel real. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. "Emma, thank you," I said. "For everything. Thank your father. He's the one who put this case together. I just finally got to present it." James Holloway appeared in the doorway. He looked tired, satisfied, like a man who had finally set down a weight he had been carrying for decades. "It's done," he said. "After all this time, it's finally done." "Thank you," I said, "for keeping your promise, for watching over me all these years." He smiled, the first real smile I had ever seen from him. "Your father was my best friend. Keeping that promise was the least I could do." He paused. "I think my work here is done, but if you ever need anything at all, I know where to find you." He nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. "He would be proud of you, Elise. David, he always knew you were stronger than you looked, braver than you knew." His voice caught. "He called you his little star. Did you know that he said you were going to light up the world someday?" I couldn't speak, could only nod, could only let the tears fall. James walked away, 26 years of vigil, complete. I found Brooke in a quiet corner of the courthouse, sitting alone, staring at nothing. She looked up when I approached. Her eyes were red, swollen, the face of someone who had just burned down her entire world. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Like I just watched everything I believed in turn to ash." She laughed bitterly. "So, pretty good, I guess." I sat down beside her. We were silent for a long moment. "You destroyed your own wedding to help me," I said finally. "It wasn't much of a wedding if it was built on 26 years of lies. Still, you gave up everything. I gave up a father who turned out to be a murderer. I gave up a life that was built on someone else's suffering." She looked at me. "I didn't lose anything real. I just finally saw what was real." I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, the file I had saved months ago, back when I still believed in fairy tales, back when I thought Brooke was my enemy. "I wrote something for you," Before any of this. Before I knew who we really were to each other. What is it? The maid of honor speech. The one I was supposed to give at your wedding. Brooke went still. I thought it was a lie when I wrote it, I said. But maybe it was always true. We just didn't know how to see it. I began to read. To my sister Brooke. We didn't have the same father, but we shared the same roof, the same mother, the same complicated, messy, beautiful thing called family. We weren't close growing up. Actually, that's an understatement. We barely spoke. We lived in the same house like strangers, divided by walls neither of us built. My voice caught, but I kept going. But here's what I've learned about family. It's not about blood. It's not about whose DNA matches whose. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when the world tells you that you don't belong together. I looked up. Brooke was crying. So was I. I choose you, Brooke, my sister, my family, not because I have to, but because I want to. Because underneath all the silence and the distance and the years of not knowing how to reach each other, you were always my sister, and I was always yours. I put down the phone. I thought I was lying when I wrote that, but I wasn't. I was just waiting for it to become true. Brooke broke, full sobbing, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. I put my arms around her, for the first time in 20 years, maybe the first time ever. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything, for not seeing, for not stopping him, for being so blind. I know. I'm sorry too. We held each other for a long time. Two sisters, finally finding each other, after all these years. I didn't see Diane coming. She appeared in the hallway like a ghost, pale, fragile, looking older than I had ever seen her. I watched your statement, she said, on the television in the waiting room. Did you? You were so brave. So strong. Her voice broke. I should have been the one standing there. I should have been brave enough to tell the world. You weren't. No, I wasn't. She took a shaky breath. But I did something. This morning, before the hearing, I submitted a deposition to the district attorney. Everything I knew, everything I suspected, everything I should have said years ago. I stared at her. My mother, the woman who had failed me in every way that mattered. You gave a statement. I couldn't testify in person, I was too scared. But I could write it down, put it on record, make sure they had my voice even if I couldn't find the courage to use it publicly. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough. Not after 26 years of silence, 26 years of choosing Richard over me, but it was something, a start, a crack in the wall. It doesn't make up for everything. I know. Nothing will. Her eyes filled with tears. I just wanted you to know. I'm trying. For the first time in my life. I'm trying to do the right thing. I didn't forgive her. I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be. But I didn't walk away either. I'll call you, I said. Someday. When I'm ready. I'll be waiting. However long it takes. Small steps. That was all we could manage. That was all I could give. The hotel room was quiet when we finally returned. Maya had gone to handle press inquiries. Brooke was with Tyler's parents trying to salvage what was left of their relationship. James had disappeared into whatever shadows he came from, just me and Daniel. Alone for the first time in what felt like forever. I stood at the window looking out at the city lights. In my hands was the photograph, the silver frame, my father's face 26 years gone, my own face 6 years old and full of trust, his little star. That's what James said he called me, his little star. I had spent so long feeling like I was nothing, like I was worthless, like the universe had made some kind of mistake when it created me. But my father had seen something different, even when I was too young to understand. Even when I couldn't remember his face without a photograph to remind me. He had looked at his daughter and seen a star. He would have liked you, I said without turning. Daniel came up behind me, his arms wrapped around my waist, warm, steady, safe. The kind of safe I had spent my whole life searching for without knowing it. You think so? I know so. He liked people who showed up, who kept their promises, who stayed when things got hard. I leaned back into him. You've done all three, without being asked, without expecting anything in return. That's a pretty low bar. You'd be surprised how few people clear it. We stood there in silence, watching the lights, breathing together. The city sprawled below us, millions of lives going on, without any idea what had happened in that courthouse today. Without any idea that a 26-year-old murder had finally been exposed. Elise! Something in his voice made me turn, made me look at him, made my heart start beating faster. You told me to ask you again when this was over. My heart stopped, then started again, faster than before, pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. Is this over? He smiled. That quiet smile I had fallen in love with. The smile of a man who saw me. All of me. The broken parts and the strong parts and everything in between. And chose to stay anyway. Richard is in custody. The truth is out. Your father's name is cleared. Your name is cleared. He paused, reached up to brush a strand of hair from my face. I think it's over. Don't you? I looked at him. At this man who had flown across the country without being asked. Who had held my hand through the worst week of my life. Who had watched me fall apart and helped me put myself back together. Who had never once made me feel like a burden. Never once made me feel like I was too much or not enough. Yes, I said. I think it's finally over. Then marry me. He didn't kneel, didn't pull out a ring, just looked at me with those steady eyes that had seen me at my worst and my best and everything in between. Elise Carter Mitchell, build something new with me. Something that's just ours. Something that has nothing to do with revenge or pain or the past. I didn't hesitate. For the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate. Yes. One word, the simplest word, the hardest to say. Yes. I want to marry you. He kissed me, soft and certain, a promise sealed. When he pulled back, he was holding a ring. Simple, beautiful, a single diamond that caught the city lights. I've been carrying this since the engagement party, he said, waiting for you to be ready. 6 months. You've been carrying this for 6 months. I knew you'd say yes eventually. I just had to wait for you to believe it yourself. He slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Later, after Daniel had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the darkness. The photograph was in my hands. My father's face. My own 26 years younger. His little star. Thank you, I whispered, for believing in me, even when I couldn't believe in myself. I thought about what he had given me, not the trust fund. Diane had taken that. Not even the evidence, though, that had saved my life. He had given me something more valuable than money could ever buy. He had given me the truth, hidden in plain sight, waiting for me to be strong enough to find it, and he had given me the courage to use it. I placed the photograph on the nightstand, next to the ring that sparkled in the dim light, next to the phone that held a maid of honor speech I had finally delivered. Tomorrow there would be more chaos, more questions, more battles to fight. The investigation would drag on for months. The trial could take years. Richard's lawyers would try every trick in the book to discredit me. But I had won. I had survived. I had taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and turned it into justice. And I hadn't done it alone. I had Daniel, Maya, Brooke, James, even Diane in her own broken way. I had family. Real family. Not bound by blood but by choice. I lay down next to Daniel, felt his arm wrap around me automatically even in sleep. The warmth of someone who had chosen to stay. The comfort of knowing I would never have to face the darkness alone again. Outside, the city hummed with the news of Richard Carter's arrest. The story of the billionaire's revenge. The truth that had been buried for 26 years finally clawing its way into the light. For the rest of the world, it was just beginning. They would dissect every detail. Analyze every choice. Turn my pain into entertainment and my victory into content for their feeds and their podcasts and their endless hunger for drama. Let them. For me, it was finally ending. The nightmare that had started when I was 6 years old, the nightmare I didn't even know I was living, was finally over. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 26 years, I slept without fear, without wondering what tomorrow would bring, without bracing for the next blow, the next criticism, the next reminder that I was worthless. "Goodbye, Dad," I whispered into the darkness. "I love you, and I hope, wherever you are, you're proud of me. I hope you can see what I became, what I survived, what I built." A tear slipped down my cheek, but it wasn't a sad tear, not anymore. I was Elise Carter Mitchell, daughter of David, survivor of Richard, billionaire, CEO, sister, daughter, fiancée, and I was finally free.